Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 491. A new wave rises before the first one settles. The corners of the young master's mouth curled haughtily. He spoke slowly. Jun Xie was nothing but a debauchee and a wastrel half a year ago. He was only at Xian level 3. He was at the insignificant Jade Xian level before going to Southern Heaven City. Jun Xie might not have become as strong as the Tian FA's Xian Beast Kings by now, but he has still reached the Sky Xian middle level. Young Lady Mei has experience of uncountable years. So, she is very far-sighted. But, how can she judge that I won't be able to reach the level of the great masters in these 2 years plus that will follow? Or an even higher level? Moreover, you could be calling tomorrow's fact as the ravings of a lunatic. Mei Shuiyan was left stumped after she listened to young Master Jun's ravings. He has transformed from a nobody trash to a Sky Xian middle rank expert in half a year. This transformation isn't something an ordinary person can pull off. So, why can't he make more breakthroughs in the next 2 years or so? Young Master Jun's voice again rang inside the ears of the stunned and beautiful Mei Shuiyan. Nothing in this world can stop me from doing something if I want to do it. Even the heavens are no exception. The tone of Jun Xie's wordings was very dull. But, the heroic spirit contained in them had stirred both the women. Mei Shuiyan narrowed her eyes slowly and absent-mindedly. That was because she had found herself believing Jun Xie's arrogant words for some mysterious reason. In fact, she believed them wholeheartedly. She was someone who possessed a firm and resolute mindset. So, it could be assumed that his words must have been extremely terrifying to bring about such a change in her. I heard that your aristocratic hall is auctioning a legendary bone-tempering pill. Mei Shuiyan smiled lightly. But she was circulating her Xian strength to calm herself as quickly as she could. She was doing this in order to tranquilize her pounding. Haha. Legendary? It's merely an insignificant plaything. Is young Lady Mei also interested in it? Jun Xie replied with a smile. Insignificant? Young Master Jun speaks very daring words. This insignificant plaything may not be very useful for us Xian Beast Kings. But it can make a world of a difference in the Xian strength of you humans. In fact, it is akin to getting a new lease on life. Hasn't your master told you even this much? Moreover, you've even managed to put them up for auction. I have no choice but to admire the immensity of your courage. Mei Shuiyan flashed a slight smile at first. Then, she put on a dignified expression. I believe that even the 3 Holy Lands will send their people to the auction once the authenticity of your pills have been confirmed. After all, pills that can temper one's natural bone structure, something as divine as these pills have never occurred in this world. The 3 Holy Lands will also send people? Isn't that impossible? These pills can only make the bones of an ordinary human very compact. That's all. But the experts in the 3 Holy Lands have been consolidating their strength for centuries. So, why would they be interested in this? Jun Xie was somewhat stunned. How is that impossible? You think those pills are ordinary? And you dare call yourself a Xian expert? Don't you know that the human body always remains a bit uncoordinated? This fact doesn't change even if the individual is a heavenly genius who has trained extremely hard. Consequently, an expert can't make one after another. Therefore, the martial skills of Xian experts have relative defects. And we usually call such defects break points. Moreover, the speed of their movements is directly related to their bones, muscles, and veins. A large number of human experts exhaust their natural capacity. They continue to strive hard in order to increase their strengths. But they fail to make their breakthroughs. Mei Shuayan continued helplessly. However, most experts can easily make their breakthroughs if they have these kinds of pills in their hands. And yet, you've put these pills up for auction. You know, even experts stronger than the great masters can only train in accordance to their natural bone structure. Even they have no means of changing that. But these bone-tempering pills will enable such people to increase their strength a step further, since they'll be able to alter their very bone structure. In fact, even the smallest of transformations would yield results. And you should know how difficult it is for such strong people to go even a step further in their cultivation. It seems that I've been negligent in this matter. Jun Moxie pondered and nodded. It seems that I've been going about this matter in a simple manner. Jun Moxie looked up and said, "Young Lady Mei, many thanks for telling me about this. You two are obviously very strong, but living here must be inconvenient for you. It'd be better if you come to my place. And you already know Guanqing Han. Moreover, it'll also be easier for us to have any discussions that way. In fact, we can refer with each other as per convenience." Jun Moxie was already making calculations for the future. Asking these two pretty chicks to come to my home is akin to getting two extremely powerful defense-type amulets for the Jun family. These two women are as beautiful as heavenly fairies. And their strength is even more heavenly. And they can seriously turn into demons when messed with. This Mei Shuayan is much stronger than the great masters. And Green Hunter is as strong as the great masters. Moreover, Solitary Falcon is already sitting at home. Our family can easily defend itself against the entire Tianxiang Empire's imperial strength with this kind of strength. In fact, all the remaining great masters wouldn't be able to do anything if they joined hands. We could even withstand against the strength of the three holy lands if they tried to invade. There are many people around me who can't defend themselves. But even they will be protected in this manner. I can finally lay down my worries and pay a visit to the Dongfang family. Then, I can make that long journey to the Silver Blizzard City in order to settle that long-fermented debt. The crumbling of the Sword Snow Mountain, and the fulfillment of his third uncle's love, these were the two things that Jun Moxie was presently striving to achieve. I must train crazy hard whether they stay at my house or not. I must. And I must. I will train hard to break through the levels of art of unlocking the Heaven's Fortune and the Hongjun Pagoda. A breakthrough is the only way in which I can gather more power. Good. Then, we'll shamelessly accept your hospitality. I'll also take this opportunity to have a proper interaction with your master in the hope that we can deepen our cooperation. Mei Shuayan hesitated for a moment. However, she finally agreed to it. Jun Moxie was left to rejoice. Therefore, the three people started to move towards the Tianxiang city. Jun Moxie asked a question out of curiosity while they were en route. "Young Lady Mei, you had said that those wolf men roar a chant every time they make a move. What chant was that exactly?" Mei Shuayan's pretty eyebrows shot up. She pondered for a while before she spoke. It was Tyrant Crush, something. I had heard it a very long time ago during the last battle. So, I don't remember it clearly. Jun Moxie became extremely angry when he first heard those words. He gnashed his teeth and cursed. Tyrant crushes everything along the path. Ah. Yes, that's what they'd say. How do you know? Mei Shuayan wobbled her head a few times before she was able to recall it. However, she then looked at Jun Moxie with extreme amazement. How do you know this? Don't tell me that your master participated in a battle for seizing the heavens. Jun Moxie remained silent and started to walk faster. Jun Moxie brought the two women to the Jun household. He then arranged for them to stay with Guan Qinghan. After all, the women already knew each other. Then, Jun Moxie started his unrelenting training. He received a pile of invitations in the days that followed. In fact, these invitations had stacked several feet in height. There were invitations from the three princes and every powerful family of Tian. Even the Xian families, while hailed outside the city, had come looking for him. However, Jun Moxie had ignored all of them. After all, he had no time to waste on such trivial matters and insignificant individuals while in training. Tang Yuan had been extremely busy during this period. He had to set up the auction for the bone-tempering pills on one hand, and he also had to deal with the Huang family on the other. However, he did everything in a very swift and decisive manner. Fatty soon realized that the upcoming auction wouldn't be an easy affair. It at least wouldn't be like any of the easy auctions he had conducted in the past. But this auction couldn't be altered even after he had realized that. The unluckiest was the Golden East City's Huang family. Their son had left for Tianxiang City, and they had been dreaming that he would return with good tidings. They were even hoping for him to return with a promise of marriage from the Dugu family. After all, this would make their desires for a rise in the Huang family's strength come true. They had been waiting and waiting for great tidings. But they received the grievous news instead. Their son had suddenly been killed. Moreover, Dugu Zongheng was extremely angry with them. And he even wanted to have a tough word with them. The Huang family obviously began to panic when they heard of this. The Huang family hadn't even dealt with old man Dugu about that matter when their affiliated businesses were pushed into an all-round crisis. Most of their business partners left overnight and cut any and all affiliations with them. Moreover, their main businesses were being suppressed to a point where they couldn't even recover. In fact, they were suffering huge losses on every transaction. These issues hadn't even subsided when hooligans suddenly started to smash into their venues in order to extort them every few days. Moreover, their family's people couldn't even go out without getting beaten up. In fact, most of them would return covered in bruises. Some of the local government officers used to sit and chat with their family's old lord over a bottle of wine under usual circumstances. However, the offices of these officials had suddenly turned into hell for the Huang family. For example, let's assume that a normal procedure would require 3 days for completion. However, it could be done in half a day for the Huang family in the past. But now, not even 1/3 of those procedures were completed in half a month. And they still couldn't complain. That's because the procedures would come to a complete standstill if they did so. This obviously meant that they'd have to go through the entire process again. As the matters stood, the Huang family could be called stupid if they didn't realize that they had offended a powerful entity. Old man Huang personally went to the Dugu family. However, he wasn't treated well. In fact, he was able to see his daughter only after going through many difficulties. It was then that he had found out that his grandson had genuinely died. He also learned of the entity his deceased grandson had offended. It turned out that the youngster had offended a family their Huang family couldn't afford to offend. Plus, the offense was also one they could never afford to commit. Moreover, this offense was the reason which had led to the youngster's death. Old man Huang's legs went weak after he heard the real reason everything that had been happening. In fact, he nearly fainted. He couldn't help but let out violent cries. "Boy, I would have never objected if you had wanted to fight a rival for your love. But Couldn't you have first considered your own standing in front of him? You acted with jealousy towards the Tang and the Jun family's heirs. And you even plotted to kill them. Your heart was cursedly bold. I naturally hate them since they've killed him. But this hatred seems negligible when compared to the interest of the entire family's survival. After all, there are hundreds of people left in the family. And all of them still have to eke out a living. And these issues are more important than that soul boy's life. Much more important. The family's wealth had been decreasing at an increasing rate. In fact, it was declining at an extremely alarming rate. Therefore, Old Man Huang decided to discard his dignity and beg forgiveness of young Master Tang. However, the Huang family situation suddenly took a turn for the better just before this happened. And this unexpected turn of events made Old Man Huang doubly confident about his situation. He forgot about his plan to apologize. Furthermore, he also decided to make them suffer instead. I'll make that fatty Tang and that debauchee Jun kneel while begging for forgiveness. I won't let them off easily. In fact, Old Man Huang had openly declared, my Huang family won't submit to force. It doesn't matter who has offended us, they will pay the price. And whoever has committed the offense of killing my grandson will repay this debt with their life. It doesn't matter who you are. One must pay with their life if they kill someone. This is the heaven's law. Old Man Huang gnashed his teeth and announced the truth of this whole matter. We had an agreement for marriage with the donghua family. But they've reneged on that agreement in order to get their daughter married to that brat from the Jun family. They've sold their daughter for glory. And my Huang family holds their actions in contempt. But the engagement has been fixed. So it must not be altered. My boy has certainly died. But the donghua family's girl will still marry into my Huang family in accordance with the wedding contract. The heavens are watching the actions of men. Truth and false will be differentiated when the heavens spread their light. Old Man Huang was even more unyielding towards Tang Yuan. My boy accidentally pushed you into that latrine pit since he thought that it was a bath. Didn't he? And you refused to forgive his mistake. You kill him at first. But you didn't stop there. You then used those malicious methods to deal with us. How is this the heaven's law? How is this justice? This created a huge uproar. After all, everyone had now learned that Fatty had fallen into that pit. This made Old Man Tang extremely angry. And Fatty Tang obviously suffered several times the humiliation and pain once the matter became public. However, it could be said that Fatty Tang had smashed his own foot with the rock that he had picked. After all, these patrons of the Huang family might not have appeared if it weren't for the auction of those bone-tempering pills. Therefore, they would have never learned about the death of that youngster. Then, the Huang family also took a meticulous aim at young Master Jun. You are the greatest debauchee and wastrel of Tian. You think that you can do whatever you want because of your master's backing? Do you think your family is super strong? You ignore the laws and oppress the people with tyranny. You stole another man's beloved. And then, you even had him killed. What sort of malice is this? How can this behavior be tolerated? Moreover, the girl you're trying to snatch is still my Huang family's future daughter-in-law. You're courting death. The Huang family also sent out many experts to beat up the lowlives who had caused so much trouble for them a few days ago. They even had the non-cooperating merchants beaten up. And they only stopped once the grievous howls of pain had started to echo everywhere. The Huang family had taken a clear stand. They had vowed to fight against these three powerful and shameless families. They would never surrender. The Huang family was filled with wrath. All levels of society were shaken and sent in uproar as this news spread. Who would have imagined that the insignificant Huang family could be so crazy? They even have the guts to take on the Dugu, Tang, and Jun families. And that too at the same time. Have they eaten something bad and lost their minds? Was that old man Huang's head kicked by a donkey? Has his head filled with water? Has he gone insane after his grandson's death? He's provoking the Dugu, Tang, and the Jun families at the same time. These are the actions of a lunatic. Calling his action completely crazy won't be an exaggeration. Countless people were watching these events unfold from a detached point of view. Most of them thought that the Huang family was done for. Then, there were others who speculated that the Huang family had some backing. After all, how else could they do something like this? How could they even dare to? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 492. 3 Great Pills. However, every family seemed to have smelled different flavors. They continued to watch in a detached manner whilst minding their own business. But the strangest reaction had come from the emperor. He had ignored all matters whether serious or not ever since the army had returned from the southern heaven city. He sat on the throne like a calm fisherman sits on the shore when the sea is enveloped in a storm. I'll act deaf and mute. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what noise you make. Why should any of this affect me? However, his obscure behavior had set even more tongues wagging. The news of the bone-tempering pill's astonishing strength spread far and wide. And the Tianxiang city instantly became a very popular place. A new chariot would enter the city almost every day. It would usually be carrying members from the various Xian families. The carriages would leave deep ruts in their wake. This symbolized that they were transporting heavy stuff. Many of them also seemed to be carrying something yellow and white. There were many people who had arrived as lone travelers. But they too had brought huge amounts of paper money with them. And they would start converting them into gold and silver once they had entered the city. Every bank in Tianxiang had filled with paper money in a few days' time, while all the gold and silver had been transferred into the guest houses and taverns. And the people were still endlessly streaming in from far-off places. Jun Moxie had stepped into the Hongjun pagoda the moment he had gotten a second's time after returning home that day. He would absorb the heavenly aura, convert it into energy, and would then put it to use. Everyone knew that Jun Moxie was at the Jun residence. But it seemed as if no one had seen him there. And there were no exceptions to this. Jun Moxie had been training like a madman during this time. However, he was also examining the Book of Folk Remedy more frantically than ever. Tens of millions of medicinal recipes are recorded inside the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. So, don't tell me that these millions of recipes don't contain a single one which I can use to improve a person's strength at this time. Jun Moxie couldn't believe that. But it can sometimes be very difficult to find something even if one believes that they exist. He looked everywhere, but still came up empty-handed. However, it wasn't very surprising that his research was turning out this way. It must be mentioned that the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune was supposed to be the most astonishing Xian art. And a mere mortal should have never dipped his finger into a pool of such marvelous strength. After all, it contained the ultimate methods for Xian cultivation. One could explain this better by drawing an analogy. Let's say that a scholar opened the greatest encyclopedia and tried to search for elementary knowledge in it. One could skim through the entire book, but they'd only obtain superficial knowledge. It wasn't that the level of the book wasn't enough, it was just that the said scholar's level wasn't enough to read this great encyclopedia. Jun Xie was unfortunately stuck in a similarly embarrassing situation. The Art of Unlocking the Heavens Fortune recorded some excellent folk remedies in it. However, it was a pity that he either couldn't refine those pills, or couldn't use those pills if refined. There were some pills which he could refine and use. But his body was likely to explode after taking even one such pill. Consequently, he would die. This is a super encyclopedia. So, it is unlikely to leave me disappointed. For example, the 10 years pill was an exception to all this. And I'm sure that there are other exceptions in this encyclopedia. I only need to search some more. I'm sure I'll find something. It needs to be mentioned that young Master Jun had built up great reserves of pills such as the 10 years pills during this time. In fact, he now had hundreds of bottles of them. He had also made reserves worth dozens of bottles when it came to the bone-tempering pills. So, he was certain that he had enough for his requirements. He had done so because he knew that the Xian beasts would only be interested in these pills, and any other pills would have entirely wasted on them. That's because strength was the most important thing in the eyes of the Xian beasts. Strength was also the second most important thing to them. And the third most important thing was also strength. This is what they wanted. This was their sole pursuit. Young Master Jun had collected hundreds of legendary raw materials in the Tian forest. Jun Moxie had originally collected those materials in order to increase his own strength. And he certainly had a lot of these divine materials in store when it came to his own needs. But he still didn't have enough when it came to the most suitable set of required ingredients. And most of these would go waste because of this reason. In fact, he could easily increase his strength over a short period of time if he were start absorbing the efficacies of these medicines. But there would still be long-term repercussions. Let's take that 100-year-old ginseng as an example. He could easily increase his strength if he were to take that ginseng. His cheese quality would also improve. However, the result wouldn't be too effective. After all, that ginseng had accumulated the efficacy which suited its own composition over these 100 years or so. But this didn't mean that it was 100% suitable for human use. There was a saying that every medicine has its side effects. Therefore, taking only one kind of medicinal herbs would only result in poor results. Moreover, this practice would also bring about an imbalance in his yin-yang attributes. After all, something like a ginseng was rich in the masculine yang attribute, but lacked the same amount of feminine yin aspects. However, it must be said that the consumer's strength would increase. It was similar to the case of a doctor's first-choice medicine when it came to the treatment of a patient who was in dire need. The said doctor would usually choose the medicine which can deliver the most extreme degree of the urgently required essence. Consuming the ginseng would certainly bring about the needed yang effect to nourish the consumer's strength. However, it would also create an imbalance by inducing a lack of the yin attribute in the user's body. The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit he had collected in the Tian forest could serve as another example. This item was extremely precious for the society at large. But it was insufficient in its independent merit when it came to the top-notch recipes recorded inside Art of Unlocking the Heavens Fortune. Therefore, he would need an abundance of other high-grade materials to complement its nature. But Jun Moxie still held this item in high regards. And this wasn't because its grade was higher than that of other items. Instead, it was because Jun Moxie could use it as an important ingredient to concoct an exceptional pill once he had entered the 6th layer. The attributes of the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit were very extreme when regarded from the perspective of human use. In fact, they were extremely dark and extremely demonic. One could certainly attempt to eliminate a great amount of its poisonous nature if they had enough time. However, the immense power of the medicine would still be too much to endure for a regular person. The Xian beasts' physiques were absolutely different. But even they may not have been able to endure it. They would naturally be able to break through their bottlenecks if they were successful in bearing the burden. And their cultivations would advance exponentially as a result. But their bodies would explode if they weren't able to handle that burden. And this would only mean a certain death for them. Tian Fa Forest's Xian Beast Kings were well aware of this danger. But they were willing to fight through this life-threatening situation in order for their pursuit of strength. This was somewhat like a divine path in the young Master Jun's eyes. After all, the heavens do extort a price for everything. This obviously didn't mean that it wasn't a legendary herb. After all, one's strength would increase by leaps and bounds if they were able to consume it. However, this didn't mean that this medicine's properties could be exploited under exception circumstances. One such way was to use to make high-level divine pill. The successful refining of those pills would increase the effectiveness. Moreover, its effects would reach a higher number of individuals. Could such a herb be recklessly squandered? Let's take the example of a millennia-old mushroom that can increase a person's strength by 100 years upon consumption. It needs to be mentioned that mushroom would only be used by one person in its raw form. However, it could be used to give 100-year worth of strength to 10 people in case it was to be refined into a medicinal pill. The distinction between ease and importance is often ignored. And the Tian Fa's sacred fruit was also an item that made a reluctant addition to this list. The Xian Beast Kings from Tian Fa wouldn't be the only ones to gain the benefits of this fruit's properties if Jun Moxie was able to refine a pill with it. Many other people could also benefit from it. Therefore, this had to be thought about in a proper manner. Else, it would only be superfluous. Jun Moxie's Xian cultivation increased unceasingly as the days passed. So, he was already in the midst of breaking through the sky Xian middle ranks in accordance to the regular Xian strength parlance. This effectively meant that he was inching towards the sky Xian peak. Jun Moxie would be immersed in considering how he could refine the legendary medicine when he wasn't practicing his cultivation. He had been researching the Book of Folk Remedies very carefully during this time. And Jun Moxie's relentless efforts were finally beginning to pay off. After all, he had finally shortlisted some recipes from the massive list of pills that were listed therein. The encyclopedia admittedly had sparse elementary knowledge. But it didn't mean that the said knowledge was absent from its text. Moreover, the scarcity of such knowledge also meant that only the extraordinary ones of the said category were listed therein. It was similar to the case of the 1,000 evils 10,000 poisons fruit. It was a legendary medicinal source for the society at large. But it was still something they couldn't use without the fear of a negative reaction from it. However, the sixth layer of the folk remedies could achieve this feat. Jun Moxie would only read the name and steps of refining the medicines in the past. However, he had now started reading the side information and detailed notes of the same as well. He had fished out many other kind of pills besides the 10-year pills when it came to the category of supplements that could increase one's strength. In fact, he had found 7 to 8 more kinds of recipes in his hunt for the needle in the haystack. Moreover, the effects of each of these pills were extraordinary. And this discovery had obviously given Jun Moxie a nice surprise. However, he had ignored the first and the second level pills. After all, he was at the third level now. So, he obviously wanted to learn to refine the pills of that level. He had found 3 such pills: the Vitality Linkage Pill, the Vitality Congregation Pill, and the heavenly vitality pill. Jun Xie had spent a tremendous amount of effort in shortlisting these 3 pills. In fact, he felt as if sorting through the myriad of the recipes listed in that book was more research than he had ever done in his previous life. Jun Xie even believed that the entire syllabus of the Beijing University would have been on his fingertips if he had shown such concentrated zeal in his previous life. The language of each country would have been nothing more than a matter of dusting his hand. Even obtaining doctorates or masters of every prestigious university wouldn't have been anything for him. This would have obviously meant that he would have never had to pretend being anyone. The vitality linkage was a divine pill which promoted the speed of the flow of aura through a person's meridians. Moreover, it could be used for Xian Qi of a normal human and the primary Qi of Tian Fa's Xian beasts. This pill certainly couldn't advance someone's Xian strength. But it would greatly advance the speed at which the aura would work inside them. Let's imagine the speed of water's flow inside a 3-meter wide river. The speed of water in that river is quite even, neither fast nor slow. And there's another river of the same breadth. But the water in this second river is surging with greater speeds. Wouldn't the force of the second river be much greater? And the effectiveness of this pill wasn't limited to this comparison alone. Let's assume that the meridians of a regular person were like a brook. Then, their meridians would resemble a high-altitude waterfall after they had taken this pill. The river would remain the same river. But its essence would be completely different. The aim of the vitality linkage pill was to turn a plain river into a mountain waterfall. Let's assume that a certain expert was able to strike 3 times in one breath. Then, this person would be able to launch 9 strikes in the same time after they had taken this pill. And there was much more to it. After all, a person's lethality would increase by 10-fold if their battle efficiency were to increase 3-fold in a decisive moment of the fight. Consequently, this minute difference would result in a massive deviation in the final outcome. And this was especially true for Tian Fa's fast and powerful Xian beast kings. In fact, this pill was almost tailor-made for them. It could even be called the most auspicious potion in the whole world. Even Jun Moxie felt that such an astonishing change was frightening. However, good rewards are often accompanied by high risks. And this pill also came with its fair share of dangers. One needed to be above the spirit Xian realm in terms of strength. Still, those without tough and flexible meridians would end up impacting their own meridians in a negative way by using this pill. Then, their entire bodies would burst apart from the negative impact of this pill's efficacy. And there would be no hoping of saving a person if something like this happened. The Vitality Congregation Pill. This medicine was similar in nature since it couldn't increase strength directly either. But it could quicken the speed of congregation of the physical strength, spirit strength, primary strength, and Xian strength inside the body. Moreover, the Dantian would also service the rest of the body 100 times better. The same stood true for the various vessels connected to it. It could also increase the absorption and transformation of the qi in the surroundings. Moreover, the speed of training would also increase by leaps and bounds after ingesting this pill. In fact, the previous speed of cultivation would only seem tortoise-like in front of this newly attained one. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 493. Concocting Pills. And the restrictions were the same as the Vitality Linkage Pill. Basically, great rewards are always accompanied with high risk. It has to be said that anyone could have easily realized that Jun Moxie was being an idiot. After all, he hadn't realized that the Vitality Congregation Pill was pretty much the same as the Spirit Amassing Pills from the previous level. However, its effectiveness was far more than that of those pills from the previous. The Heavenly Vitality Pill. This pill could be used to increase strength, but it had no other benefits. It could be said to be an upgraded version of the 10 years pills. Taking one of these pills would increase the strength by 50 years. However, its restrictions were greater than that of the 10 years pills. It couldn't be taken by anyone. Only those at Sky Xian realm and above could take these. Jun Moxie was going wild inside the Hongjun pagoda. He was laughing and cursing. He yelled out, "Hard work always pays off. This instance proves that one shall get to reap the harvest if they plow the field in a diligent manner. This young master has worked so diligently, but he has finally found these 3 kinds of pills. This is like finding some measure of hope after exhausting oneself rugged whilst being at the edge of desperation." However, the young master still had some doubts. After all, strength had always been of paramount importance in his mind. Consequently, he believed that the Heavenly Vitality Pill was better than the Vitality Linkage and the Vitality Congregation Pill. After all, it could increase strength by 50 years. Why would something as amazing and terrifying as the Heavenly Vitality Pill have such a low-level restriction? Moreover, the other 2 pills are restricted for use until the Spirit Xian realm and above. But the Heavenly Vitality Pill's restriction is only at the Sky Xian level. The disparity between these 2 is far too much, right? This doesn't make any sense. People would have probably beaten him up if they had heard of the doubts he harbored. In fact, the said individuals would have turned his face into a peach blossom. Those eyes of his would have puffed, and he would have been left to see stars hovering around him. His head would have resembled that of a pig, or maybe an elephant's posterior. However, they would have at least told him why they had beaten him red. And it could be assumed that he would have only vomited blood even if he would try to roar in anger afterwards. He was idiot, a thorough and true idiot. Such a divine level of idiocy would even leave the gods speechless. However, the young master was still favored by such amazing fortunes. How could such a great thing fall into the hands of such a big idiot? It seemed as if an excellent cabbage had been awarded to a pig which had dug the earth with its snout. Jun Moxie had seemingly taken permanent residence in the Hongjun pagoda. And he would only do one of 2 things: he'd either refine the pills, or he'd practice his martial arts. He'd often feel thirsty or hungry. But he would simply eat some of the common ingredients he had stored there. It was a bit of a waste, but it could satiate his thirst and hunger under the circumstances. Moreover, these common herbs would also give him energy. He obviously had a huge stock of them in his reserves. So, he didn't bother himself much with them since only a short amount of time was left at his hands. It was clear that these things weren't of much importance to Jun Moxie anymore since he had started to compare these mere materials to the greatest herbs available. Consequently, young Master Jun was being extravagant and wasteful with them. In fact, he was wasting them recklessly. Any other family of this Xian continent would have held these items in the highest regard. They would have taken rebirth to live a life of extreme torment even if they had died, but they wouldn't have allowed these herbs to slip out of their hands. After all, these were top-notch raw materials which came from the very depths of Tian Fa. In fact, these herbs could be considered the accumulation of the many years of horrors in the Tian Fa forest. After all, how many people in the world were capable of safely reaching the very core of Tian Fa? Even the 8 great masters would fear losing their lives if they were to enter the Tian Fa forest. Even a 100-year-old herb would be considered a treasure if it were to be put out in the open market. However, Jun Moxie was treating the 1,000-year-old ones as carrots. In fact, he was even sighing. It's tasteless. It doesn't even have salt's taste. It tastes like I'm chewing wax. It's not tasty at all. This young master is being mistreated. Many old and gray-haired men from the divine medicinal families would have been left striving to get here if this information had gotten out. In fact, they would have fought and smashed each other's heads to rush here first. I beg you. I beg you to let me endure this mistreatment instead. I beg you, my whole family of 8 generations begs you to allow us to endure this in your place. Let us be mistreated. Then, there was that fatty Tang. A money-grubbing miser like him would have come yelling and crying. Elder brother. You're my elder brother. Why don't you bully me instead? I'll take it 10 times. 100 times. Whatever you want. But, stop eating these. It's like you're eating a mountain of silver or gold. Mistreat me as much as you want. But stop this. Young Master Jun's face would redden once those thousands of years old herbs had reached his belly. Energy would surge through his body, and he would have no place to vent it. So, he'd first circulate his energy smoothly and steadily throughout his body. Then, he'd roar and practice his skill for a long time. After that, he'd snigger and snort. Then, he'd practice his sword play for a bit. And he would begin refining the pills again once he was done with this. Jun Moxie was already quite experienced in refining the pills. After all, it could be said that he had gained a fairly rich alchemic experience from frantically refining the bone tempering and 10 years pills in the past. However, Jun Moxie was confronting the research on these 3 new pills. And he rightly believed that he should start with the pill of the lowest level. He would wait till he had garnered more experience before he'd begin to refine the more troublesome and higher-valued heavenly vitality pill. After all, squandering such top-notch ingredients would be a huge waste. Therefore, his first choice was the pill which was comparatively simpler, the vitality linkage pill. The young Master Jun was in high spirits. He assumed a balanced stance to start. It was a most eye-catching stance. After that, he started mumbling the chants he had learnt. Mommy, mommy, Huang, Huang, mommy, Huang. Then, he pointed his finger like a sword. The furnace of good fortune started to whiz. It rose into the air and started to rotate. It started emitting various vapors and lights of 10,000 hues along with its rotating motion. It slowly started to flame up as the black flame of primal chaos silently leapt up. The flame then rushed up with a loud bang and covered the furnace. The black flame was moving like thousands of ghostly tongues. The blaze had begun to combust within the furnace. And the black color of the flame had illuminated the multicolored furnace of good fortune in a splendid manner. Jun Moxie flashed a prideful smile. He was brimming with confidence. His empty right hand grabbed towards around 20 herbs he had prepared in advance. And they floated forth very slowly as a result. In fact, it seemed as if an invisible string was pulling them along. These herbs then entered the furnace one by one, like moths drawn to a flame. Jun Moxie made several fluctuating finger movements. He then heard a bang as the lid of the furnace flew up. But it only flew up for a second before rejoining the main body of the furnace. Then, there was another explosion as the flame of primal chaos soared. And the entire furnace was surrounded by it in an instant as a result. Jun Moxie moved his limbs in accordance to the requirement for the refining of the pills. He moved around the black flame as his fingers made many gestures. Consequently, energy surged from within his body to support the combustion of the flame of primal chaos. Time passed quickly. However, Young Master Jun suddenly felt that something was wrong. Dang! I've been refining these pills for a long while now. In fact, I guess that I've already spent at least tenfold the time I've ever spent on any of the pills I've refined in the past. So, how come I haven't witnessed any activity yet? I would have taken the pills out of the furnace by now if these were the 10 years pills. But there hadn't been any development in the case of these pills. What's going on? A good while passed, and Jun Moxie started feeling that his energy had drained. He felt his mental strength waning, and he was on the verge of passing out. His legs felt weak, and his body had become damp from the excessive sweating. The young master's energy was nearly bottoming out. However, there hadn't been any activity from the dark flames surrounding the furnace. I must stand firm. This is a very crucial moment. I can't screw up. I must stand firm. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth, took out a 10 years pill, and threw it into his mouth. It can't increase my strength anymore, but it can still restore my energy. The goddess of fortune favored the young master once more when he was completely exhausted, and wasn't able to continue any further. There was a sound of a gong from the furnace, and its lid flew into the sky with a gentle sound resembling that of birds. The flame of primal chaos silently withdrew, and slowly crumbled into a small heap inside the furnace. Heavens be donghua! It's too difficult. How can it be so difficult? It isn't like the bone-tempering pills or the majority of other pills. How can it be so difficult? This process nearly killed this young master. Jun Moxie panted hoarsely. He was sweating very profusely. His legs shuddered like noodles for a moment. Then, they eventually buckled. And he was forced to sit as a result. It was like he had done a lot of work throughout many nights without rest. He was like a horse which had run thousands of miles without a moment's rest. His tongue poked out as he continued to pant and shake for a long while. He then stood up with difficulty, and stretched his neck to look into the furnace. How could this be? Jun Moxie exclaimed in shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Consequently, the young master rubbed his eyes, and stared at it again. A heap of black ash quietly lay in the furnace. Jun Moxie felt like an inflated balloon that was leaking air. He felt paralyzed. His body's reserves had been depleted in their entirety. His energy had been pushed beyond the limit. And his confidence had suffered a crushing blow. I wasted so much energy, and I still failed. Feck me. How could it be so difficult? Feck. I don't believe this evil sorcery. I will sort you out. Don't think that I can't bring you under my control just because I've failed once. Jun Moxie's expression was fierce as he jumped up and raised his finger to the sky. Then, he closed his eyes and initiated the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune once more with the entirety of his strength. His dantian warmed up, and started palpitating. Then, a stream of pure energy flew out, and rushed through his meridians. The divine aura inside the Hongjun pagoda violently started moving towards Jun Moxie like tornadoes on a sea. A long and immeasurable period of time elapsed. Jun Moxie's eyes suddenly emitted a sharp radiance as they opened. His physical stamina and energy had been restored to its optimum. But further investigations made Jun Moxie realize that his energy overdraft limit had surprisingly increased from its previous limit. This increase in overdraft limit was a great step towards the next level inside the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. In fact, he could clearly feel that his ability to absorb aura had increased by 3 or 4 times. That's strange. Jun Moxie scratched his head. Then, he got out into his courtyard, and realized that his effort in refining those pills had taken no less than a full day and a night if the subsequent recovery of his strength was also taken into account. He had stayed in the Hongjun Pagoda for over 10 days if everything was to be taken into account. His originally snow-white gown had become so filthy that it couldn't even be looked at. His hair was disheveled and dirty. In fact, it appeared like he had been into a chicken coop. His face had many black marks, and his sweat was flooding the floor. He'd look like a beggar, even to beggars. Jun Moxie quickly gave a few orders to make arrangements. Then, he hurriedly slipped into the large bathtub and scrubbed himself clean. And he also thought about what had happened as he did so. He didn't even know how lucky he was that he hadn't chosen the pill, which was even more difficult. He had only chosen the second-tier vitality linkage pill. He would have been in a much worse-off condition if he had picked the vitality congregation pill instead. However, things would have been different if he had chosen the easy heavenly vitality pill. In fact, it was possible that he would have been done with the refining by now. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 494. Treacherous Countermeasures. However, someone was of the young master's level of idiocy was obviously ignorant of this fact. In fact, his failure in refining these pills had led him to believe that these super pills were extremely difficult to refine and master. He believed that the heavenly vitality pill was the most effective pill in this list of 3. And he also took it to be the most precious one as well. Therefore, he assumed that its refining process must be even harder than this vitality linkage pill. Jun Moxie intended to go back into the Hongjun Pagoda for another round of struggle once he had bathed and rested. Little Ku's small face had become red with embarrassment while she waited upon him on the side. She looked at the young master's fair, robust, and strong body. She felt that his body was glistening with a mysterious glitter of gems. Subsequently, her small face became redder, and her body became warmer. The little girl's heart was beating wildly. Her pretty eyes were wandering about to dodge the sight of it. But she still couldn't control her urge to peek every now and then. He is so good-looking. How can he be so good-looking? The young master is a real man. The little girl was thinking to herself. What? The third young master has returned? Let me in, why? Why won't you let me in? I'm his brother. A good brother. Do you know? He's taking a bath. Dang. We're both men. So, what difference does it make if I go in while he's taking a bath? You think I'll PE him? Get the feck out of my way. Resentment-laced yelling was heard as Tang Yuan tried to enter the young master's bathing space. Tang Yuan entered through the door with a bang. The door of the young master's bathroom was very narrow. So, the fatty had to force himself through the door. Jun Moxie was resting in his bathtub with eyes closed. However, he instantly opened his eyes and stared blankly. Tang Yuan had seen all of him. So, how could he not feel angry? Third young master. I'll die of anger. I'll genuinely die of anger. Tang Yuan raged in front of Jun Moxie. In fact, he nearly spewed fire. There's this matter, that Huang family doesn't understand their place. They want me to pay with my life for their lowly, treasured son. They still want to hold their dead kid's marriage. They want the Dugu family Xiao Yi to marry to their son's memorial tablet. They're very repulsive. They even want you third young master Jun to go and kneel in front of their son's memorial tablet as an apology in admission of your mistakes. What in the world is happening? This is like a fecking rabbit trying to threaten a wolf. What happened, fatty? Young Master Jun closed his eyes, frowned, and reclined backwards in his bathtub. He was getting impatient. I'm be asterisk tt Niked here. It would have been one thing if we were in a public bath, since everyone else would have also been Niked. So, the environment would have been one of trust and comfort. And I too would have had no problems in that. Moreover, I've got an amazing body. So, I would have even left you feeling inferior. But I opened my eyes to find you covering my bathtub with saliva whilst being fully dressed. This is so embarrassing for me. Elder brother, you don't know what has been happening. I don't what has happened with that Huang family. They've suddenly become bold and aggressive now. In fact, their aggression is even worse than a mad dog's. Tang Yuan was jumping up and down. There was an air of maliciousness to him. They had put out a strong statement in the public. They were acting extremely recklessly, and I couldn't stand them. I had decided to send some troops to exterminate them. But I don't know what's going on with my grandfather. My grandfather sent a messenger to the aristocratic hall, and he warned me against taking any reckless actions. Even the Dugu family has decided to hold their troops back for now. I'm fecking depressed right now. Don't tell me that this insignificant Huang family can somehow flip the heavens. Huang family? They're acting arrogantly. Jun Moxie had been training and refining pills over the last few days. So, he was left baffled for a second. He gradually gathered his thought, and quickly sat up with a splash of water. However, the young master's face had a serious expression now. And that's because Jun Moxie had suddenly remembered the time when he had ordered Huang Shu Lu's execution. Dugu Wudi's second wife had said something. And it must be mentioned that she also hailed from the Huang family. One of my relatives is a member of the boundless ocean of blood. And Mei Shuiyan's words had also appeared inside his mind at the same time. That pill of yours is truly miraculous. I believe that this auction for the bone-tempering pills could likely draw people from the three holy lands as well. Jun Moxie frowned and thought to himself, don't tell me it has genuinely drawn a move from the people from the boundless ocean of blood amidst the three holy lands? And is there a chance that the Huang family's relative is also involved in this instance? But this is too great a coincidence, isn't it? Don't worry, fatty. Worrying won't do fart. Tell me everything in detail. What happened when you started taking those actions? And don't omit a single thing. Jun Moxie closed his eyes again and returned to his reclining position. But his mind was working at a great speed as he pondered over Tang Yuan's narration. In fact, he didn't allow any words of Tang Yuan to slip from his notice. That's because he wanted to glean some sort of truth from those tiny clues. Tang Yuan was also a man with an extraordinary temperament. He had certainly been fired up and enraged a moment ago. However, he too had realized that something was up. There was a flash in his mind, and he didn't dare continue with babbling his nonsense. Instead, he honestly talked about the various matters which had taken place. Moreover, he narrated matters in extreme detail, and to the best of his ability. He believed that his elder brother Jun Moxie was someone who was afraid of nothing. Have I ever seen such a cautious expression on his face? Don't tell me that this matter is genuinely very serious. Is a terrifying and amazing person hiding amongst the Huang family's people? Jun Moxie listened to the words Tang Yuan spoke. The Huang family didn't have the strength to fight back in the beginning. They were even ready to ask for forgiveness. The entire family was extremely alarmed, and was at a loss to do anything. They were like the spirits of the dead at that time. But They suddenly underwent an unexplainable transformation over the last few days. They went from bowing and begging to becoming extremely arrogant and unyielding. Moreover, the many demands they had put forth couldn't be accepted by any of the three powerful families. The Huang family clearly wanted to embarrass all of them. In fact, it seemed as if they wanted to establish themselves above the might of these three big families. How can the Huang family dare to do this? Let's look around at the powers of the world. Even the help of the imperial family, or other powerful families around the world wouldn't be enough to act as assurance. So, how can they dare to do this? Jun Moxie pondered over that issue. The Huang family's decision can't be one of stupidity. After all, they had readied themselves to compromise in the beginning. So, it is unlikely that they would wish to play with the lives of their family's people. Therefore, this sudden and massive change in their attitude had left Jun Moxie to draw the final conclusion. I believe that the Huang family's relative has suddenly returned from the boundless ocean of blood. Otherwise, the Huang family would have never dared to court disaster in this manner even if they were very gutsy. And that's because they know that they wouldn't have any means of retreat once they had taken this stance. But this matter will take an entirely different turn if the Huang family's relative from the legendary boundless ocean of blood has returned to support them. After all, the Huang family can challenge the Jun, the Tang, and the donghua family with the help of the boundless ocean of blood. In fact, they could even challenge a colossal like the Silver Blizzard City. However, the Huang family has been thundering so ferociously for many days. But the thunderous clouds haven't rained thus far. This made Jun Moxie even more certain about what Mei Shuayan had said: these people had come for the bone-tempering pills. Tang Yuan, keep calm. Jun Moxie de-emphasized the problem and spoke. Is the insignificant Huang family worth making such a fuss about? I'll be a bit busy over the next few days. So, let's leave this matter aside for the time being. Anyway, revenge can get even more pleasurable if it's extracted little by little. Fatty was stunned by this. He wasn't going to oppose Jun Moxie's statement. After all, oppressing someone little by little was indeed very pleasing. But the issue was the manner in which Jun Moxie was behaving right now. Moreover, the bone-tempering pills can't be stored inside the aristocratic hall anymore. I'll ask Solitary Falcon to go with you in order to retrieve them. It's safer for them to be kept here with me. A cold light flashed in Jun Moxie's eyes. You want to mess with me? You want my bone-tempering pills? You think that things can get so easy in life? I don't care whether you're the boundless ocean of blood or anyone else. What can the three holy lands do? You must be prepared to be destroyed by my hand if you wish to fight me. So, you think that you have enough to hoot at this young master? This young master has decided that he won't kill you in one shot. I'm going to kill you after I've slowly tortured you. It was an extremely safe bet to send Solitary Falcon to retrieve the bone-tempering pills. After all, he'd fare fine even if the remaining great masters attacked him together. Solitary Falcon would certainly be no match for them. But he could fly away and retreat with ease. Ah, that's also good. There has been a lot of activity around the aristocratic hall at night time in the recent days. Hai Chenfeng and Song Shang have been keeping watch. But even that has yielded very little results. I was beginning to get scared. Tang Yuan acted like he was wiping off cold sweat. Song Shang and Hai Chenfeng would have cut his flesh off if they had heard this. They had been dealing with this nighttime activity every night. And they were left half dead every night. In fact, the aristocratic hall would have been torn down by now if it weren't for those two. Meanwhile, Tang Yuan's snores had been shaking up the entire Tian city during the night hours. In fact, it was possible that his snores had reached 5 kilometers beyond the city's perimeter. So, to say that he was scared and on the edge. Ah. And there's no need for you to put your life at stake in case someone captures you in order to interrogate about the whereabouts of these pills. You will even tell them that those pills are in the elegant fragrance courtyard of the Jun family's residence. Moreover, you will tell them that the ones stored here are the best ones. Jun Moxie had said this in a very serious manner. Why? Tang Yuan asked, puzzled. The elegant fragrance courtyard. But that's where Sister Qing Han lives. What would happen if anyone bursts into that place? It wouldn't be good for Sister Qing Han as a woman, right? That'll be fine. That'll be completely fine. Jun Moxie was all smiles as he spoke. You don't need to worry about those trivial details. You simply tell anyone what I told you to if you get captured. Listen to me. And don't worry. Fatty, you only know that Sister Qing Han lives there. But how could you know that she has been joined by 2 tigresses now? Bah! They aren't even tigresses. They're much fiercer. Those 2 are queen tigresses. It won't matter who these people are. They'll die a miserable death as long as they believe you and go there to steal those pills. In fact, it would be like someone lighting candlelight at a barrel of gunpowder. They'd get blasted into pieces. The result will be the same no matter how someone goes about it. And this couldn't be called a lie either. After all, young Master Jun had given some pills to Mei Shuiyan and had requested her to examine them. He. This is a death trap. It's a death trap which can't be broken through. Tang Yuan nodded in a daze. He didn't know what Jun Moxie meant by it, but he chose to believe him. The matter had been more or less discussed. And the water in Jun Moxie's bathtub was getting cold. Therefore, Jun Moxie opened his eyes and glared. Haven't you seen enough already? Fatty Tang was left to stutter. Huh? Haven't I seen enough? You've seen enough. But you're still not hurrying out. Get lost. Quickly. I have to get dressed. Jun Moxie spoke ferociously. You're a grown man staring at another grown man while he's Nike'd. I didn't know that you take pleasure in this. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 495. Tian Fa sends a batch of herbs. Hang on. Do you think I want to see your Nike'd ass? I used to avoid looking at your body even when we used to take hot baths. Brother, you're so thin that it's nauseating. The corners of Tang Yuan's mouth twitched in disdain. But those twitching corners appeared to be a smile because his face had many layers of fat on it. He stood up and patted his extremely huge posterior. Then, he went out the door. Fatty, you broke through my door. I'll cut 5,000 coins from your share to compensate for it. Fatty Tang had talked rudely. He had even ridiculed Jun Moxie's majestic body. Young Master Jun couldn't help but get mad. And those will be gold coins. A plop sounds came from outside as Tang Yuan tumbled to the ground. 5,000 gold coins? What kind of a door is that expensive? Jun Moxie slowly dried the wet spots on his body. Then, the red-faced little coup helped him get into dry clothes. It had to be said that coming over to this world had done a lot of harm to Jun Moxie. After all, the assassin used to be self-sufficient in his previous life. However, he had now gotten accustomed to a lifestyle wherein he relied on others to even get his clothes for him. This is what genuine depravity is about. Young Master Jun got into his gown. He again looked neat and charming now. Then, Jun Moxie lightly pinched little Ku's cheek. And this made her pout in a playful protest. He laughed at that, and quickly went out to look for solitary Falcon so that he could get him to retrieve those pills from the aristocratic hall. Jun Zhan Tian and Jun Wu Yi were making preparations to go over the important rituals required to recognize Guan Qinghan as an adopted daughter. However, there was another jobless old man in the Jun family's residence these days, Dugu Zongheng. Dugu Zongheng would come over to the Jun family's residence every day ever since he had heard that Jun Moxie could heal his injuries. Both these powerful families were already acquaintances. Moreover, they would soon be related by marriage. So, Dugu Zongheng didn't feel like an outsider over here. However, everyone in the Jun residence was always frantically running around since they were very busy. Also, Jun Moxie didn't seem to have any time on his hands over the past few days. Dugu Zongheng waited with patience for a few days. But he eventually started to get resentful. Thus, the old man Dugu's frighteningly loud voice was frequently heard around the Jun family's residence. In fact, it was like a thunderbolt in the clear sky. It was much like Tang Yuan's nightly snoring, which used to startle people even 4 to 9 kilometers outside the city's walls. This made the servants at the Jun residence realize that they were blessed to be serving Jun Zhan Tian instead. It was then that Jun Moxie rushed in with his divine medications and quickly treated old man Dugu. There was nothing to treat when we come to speak of it. After all, the young master was merely required to insert a few needles into Dugu Zongheng's fleshy posterior and circle his aura through old man Dugu's meridians via the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. This process didn't take much effort, but Dugu Zongheng suddenly felt as if most of his body had lightened up. Consequently, the old man roared that young Master Jun was a divine doctor. However, that roughened old man was quite shrewd by nature within. He had carefully recorded what and where Jun Moxie had given him during the acupuncture treatment. He had even muttered to himself in doubt. "There's nothing in that area besides meat. Do acupuncture points genuinely exist over there? How can the mere usage of needles on my ass show such results? This is very strange." This also led Dugu Zongheng to consult the many other divine doctors inside the capital's premises. But he only rained curses at each one of them afterwards. That's because these doctors' caliber was identical to each other. They had inserted the needles in the same places. Even the pain he had felt as similar when it comes to the intensity. However, the effects weren't similar to Jun Moxie's treatment in any manner. The old man couldn't help but lament at this. It's not surprising that there's such a dearth of doctors who can cure this problem. Old man Dugu had often trusted these doctors for the treatment of his now cured injury in the past. So, how could he not rain curses at them? Your treatment is very ordinary. Your ordinary treatment causes nothing but pain. You are good for nothing. Several of the doctors had nearly gone insane after facing the old man's wrath. He had only been through one session of the treatment. So, it hadn't rooted out the problem yet. But Dugu Zongheng was still very satisfied. After all, he hadn't felt such a relaxed, pleasing, and comfortable sensation for many decades. He crossed paths with Jun Zhan Tian the same evening. And he drank a lot that evening. In fact, he drank enough to lose his bearings. He had drunk so much after so many years. So, how could he not get high on it? Jun Moxie returned to the Hongjun Pagoda in the midst of this chaos, and began his struggle again. But He soon discovered that his skills and capabilities could see a major enhancement upon being replenished after reaching a state of full-fledged exhaustion. In the far south, two large men were vigorously riding northwards. Their mounts could have been called horses, but they had horns on their heads. Moreover, their heads weren't as long. They could be called deer. But their hooves were circular. Moreover, one could see white hair underneath their hooves when they were raised. In fact, it seemed like they were wearing some sort of hoof mittens. But they moved with lightning speed. It was needless to talk about regular horses, because even the legendary war horses couldn't compare with them. However, it was even more strange was that these men weren't riding on any saddles. They weren't using any reins, or stirrups either, nor were they shouting commands at their mounts. But those strange steeds were still able to detect the routes by themselves. Moreover, the expressions of those two men made it seem as if this was a perfectly normal thing. There was a huge package at the back of each of those two steeds. These packages were terrifyingly big in size. And it was evident that they were of considerable weight. These two men had come upon many people with shining eyes and drooling mouths all through their journey. That was because those two packages were emitting the smell of medicinal herbs. In fact, they smelled like first-rate medicinal herbs. No, even top-notch rarities couldn't describe the preciousness of those herbs. So, calling them legendary treasures from the heavens was more appropriate. Their scent was enough to attract anyone. An individual wouldn't even need to consume them. The said individual would feel extremely energetic and refreshed even if they were to sniff these through their ** talks. It was obvious that such herbs would attract the attention and intentions of many people. Therefore, the journey of these two men couldn't be considered peaceful by any means. Countless pharmacists had approached them to buy those ingredients at great prices. Countless medicinal families had come up with some plans. And the small-time thieves and robbers who had tried to steal those ingredients were many more in number. However, these two big men had fearlessly continued onwards with their journey in a brazen manner. They had hardly paid any mind the whole journey. They moved calmly and peacefully. Even the successive waves of the robbers didn't seem to affect them. In fact, they didn't pay any attention to anyone. They were already halfway to their destination, and hadn't been delayed in any manner. Moreover, their long gowns were still bright and neat, not a speck of dust had dirted them. In fact, the two men had been chatting throughout the journey, as if they were on a pleasant picnic. Fourth elder brother. This journey is long, but it's still quite pleasant, ha. This large man wore an embroidered gown. He had large hoops around his tiger-like eyes. Vivacious whiskers were jutting outwards from his cheeks. These whiskers seemed similar to that of a young dragon. In fact, it felt as if they were made of strips of iron. This person's stature would only leave a person to think of flattering words like majestic, valiant, mighty, lofty, robust, elegant, sturdy. Ah, old ninth, you said. Ah, this fourth elder brother of yours doesn't know what he must say about you. Why did you insist on coming along? I would have rode on third elder brother's back if it hadn't been for your shameless persistence. And we would have been there by now in that case. But here we are right now. The other person was of the same body type. However, he was even more tall and sturdy. He was very big. In fact, he genuinely resembled a bear. But his tone was nevertheless one of complaint. There was no need to bump about on this extremely long road. I'm truly unlucky. Your fourth elder brother has suffered a lot because of you. I could have spent this time doing Fourth elder brother. You also know that I haven't come out to play for so many decades. I never get such an opportunity. And this is a good journey. This road is very good. Take a look at all this enchanting scenery. We can do so many things on this road. This is the happiest day of my life. It's like a mythical day. The sturdy big man in the embroidered gown smiled as his eyes filled with satisfaction. He smacked his lips and spoke. The only pity is that I can't help but break these people so easily. One small tap and they go lying on the ground. That's no fun in any way. Tell me, can some spirit Xian or great master level robbers come to rob us? Bullshit. I spit on your face. What bullshit are you spewing? How many people in this world can withstand a hit from you, the Golden Tiger King? And then, you even want some spirit Xian or great master level robbers to come and waylay us like lowly thieves. What are you thinking? Someone with your intelligence should never say that you know me. I'm so wise and farsighted, but I can't lose this image. The big and burly man unhappily rolled his eyes and gave a long sigh. Dang, that third old crane is too much. He didn't come himself, but he didn't even allow the Falcon King to drop the two of us off. He's so heartless to make us go on this journey like this. Once I return, I don't think going slow is a bad thing. The Golden Tiger King Earthcracker scratched his head. He seemed somewhat embarrassed. I have a fear of heights. That's the reason I call you a burden. The big and burly Bear King Big Bear berated without a trace of gentleness. I didn't want you to come, but you wanted to come. Things would have been better if you had let third brother come instead. Just take a look at how much trouble we've provoked the entire journey. You've been slaughtering people the entire journey. The Tiger King gave a flattered smile as he cracked his knuckles. But, isn't this so much more fun? Fourth elder brother? But, these people have no good supporters behind them. It would have been nice even if they had the support of some spirit Xian person. It is such a disappointment. Big Bear gave him an unhappy look and sighed deeply. He seemed to be very depressed. Ah, fourth elder brother, this opportunity to go to the Tianxiang city is very rare. We can play around for many days. The Golden Tiger King's face was painted in shades of greed. Merely delivering these ingredients isn't satisfying enough. It's not as good as staying there for a few days and searching for people who can play some matches with us. I'm guessing that there are bound to be a few such people in Tianxiang. Or maybe we'll come across that mysterious senior again. Maybe he'll quench our light thirst. You pig-headed idiot. Haven't you quenched your slight thirst enough? Big Bear started to rain curses. Alas! How can I have a sworn brother such as you? Don't speak to me. I feel frustrated the moment I look at you. I can't wait to meet the others. I want them to know that I'm thinking of disowning you as a younger brother of mine. Calm down, fourth brother. Calm down, you must seriously calm your anger. The Tiger King smirked. The Bear King had no option but to slap his head with a sigh. This was like when he was with Long Crane and moved about with him regularly. Big Bear could clearly understand how Long Crane must have felt at that time. It was the feeling of wanting to raise his leg and kicking that shameless idiot besides him to death. Brother Crane must have wanted to kick me to death then. Big Bear snorted. Dang it! I'll settle these debts once I get back. This ought to have been his payback for the countless times he must have wanted to kick me to death in the past. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 496. Huang family supporter. This is too much to handle. But a brother is a brother. Big Bear remained silently thought. He then rebuked and gnashed his teeth as he looked at the Tiger King Earthcracker. Then, he suddenly felt a sense of sympathy the next moment. Everyone has a character trait worth being kicked to death over. These two big men were obviously carrying out the agreement they had made with Jun Moxie while he was disguised as the mysterious master back in Tian Fa. The first batch of the herbs was being delivered to the Tianxiang city from Tian Fa by these two Xian Beast Kings. The Xian Beast Kings had done nothing else after Jun Moxie had left. They had urgently tasked all the Xian beasts to search for the legendary medicinal herbs. And they had collected them till they had enough to make one batch. Then, the Beast Kings had decided to deliver those herbs without delay. The situation between the 7 Beast Kings had nearly devolved into a fight when they came to deciding which two would escort the consignment. After all, trips like these very rare to come by. In fact, it was basically like an all-expenses-paid trip. Moreover, there was a chance that they might get some extra rewards from that mysterious master. So, who wouldn't wish to go on this trip? The Bear King and the Tiger King fought hard, and won the right to escort the material in the end. After all, Long Crane was obviously required to stay back and preside over the forest. Big Bear had believed that I obviously won't stay behind and take command in the present conditions. Tian Fa would become a place for daily high-stake duels if I stayed behind and oversaw things. There even might be another Xian Beast uprising. Long Crane had been confronted with the annoying menace of these shameless rascals. Therefore, he had no choice but to wrinkle his nose and admit defeat. But he set one rule before the 2 selected Beast Kings left: you two will have to travel on foot. I won't allow the use of any flying beast. Would the flying Xian beasts dare to move out once the Crane King had given that order? Henceforth, Big Bear felt wronged throughout the journey. However, the Tiger King hadn't left the Tian Fa forest in several decades. So, everything he saw seemed refreshing to him. He had been happy and excited throughout the journey. And this had made Big Bear so resentful and sullen that he had no option but to vent those feelings out. The Tiger King wasn't as learned as his companion. So, this trip had been a very pleasant and unique experience for him. In fact, he felt that his cheeks had somewhat stiffened from smiling too much. But the look on his 4th elder brother's face had made it obvious that the latter was brimming with resentment down to his very belly. They had been attacked regularly by robbers. And those robbers had become the target vents for their resentments. Else, it could be assumed that Big Bear would have lectured Earthcracker into a depression over the course of the journey. The 2 Beast Kings were getting increasingly closer to the Tianxiang city as they leisurely went on with their journey. In fact, they seemed to be enjoying the attacks they had been facing their entire journey. Could those common robbers rival these 2 Beast Kings? Those greedy folks were obviously being used for target practice. The Golden Tiger King had been playing around the entire journey. He would first expose his aura into the surroundings in attempts to lure competition. Then, he'd sling a bag of those 100-year-old herbs over his shoulder for everyone to see. Consequently, the robbers would come rushing like bees to honey. He had even proposed out of excitement. We don't need to fly the next time either if we're sent to do something like this. Elder brother. Dang. Flying over isn't half as much fun. But this is too great. Big Bear rolled his eyes unhappily. You think you're getting a chance the next time? I've got nothing to say to you if that's the case. And let me tell you something for your own sake: don't try to worm your way into getting on my good side. I don't want to be around you. The Tiger King smiled in a silly manner. He continued to flatter his counterpart. And these two men continued onwards like this their entire journey. Golden East City. The Huang family's residence. A purple-robed old man slowly settled onto a chair in the middle of the drawing room. He had gray and white hair, and his gray eyebrows were slanted upwards. He seemed to be giving off a very fierce aura even though he was motionless. But his cheeks were exceptionally rosy and glossy. The gray and white hair on his head seemed very unique but mutually incompatible in their two shades. This man's facial features strangely appeared similar to someone who was around 30 to 40 years old. In fact, he gave of a feeling of youthful appearance despite his age. His eyes were slightly narrowed, but the light flashing in them seemed to carry substance. He hadn't spoken anything, but his personality seemed as vast as the oceans. There was no way anyone could see through, or even read him. He was sitting so calmly that it seemed as if he had already integrated into the surroundings. It seemed as if he had melted into the vast ocean of the universe. This man seemed one with the nature. This purple-clad man had already surpassed the level of great masters. 5 to 6 people were seated beside him. They didn't look very young either. And they were also adorned in purple clothing. Each of these calmly seated people had grizzly hair. Everyone seemed to be wearing the same kind of clothes at first glance. But a discerning eye could tell the difference. The collar and cuffs of the purple-robed old man were resplendent gold. But those of other purple-robed people beside him were embroidered in silver. Silver and gold, this distinguished their status in the hierarchy. There was a middle-aged man amongst them. He seemed about 30 to 40 years old. However, his robe also had golden collar and cuffs. He had dense eyebrows, but a pair of slender eyes. This purple-robed middle-aged man seemed to be the youngest in this group. But it seemed that his hierarchical status was at par with the golden-cuffed purple-clad old man seated beside him. The 8 people were drinking tea in silence. In fact, they hadn't made any sounds in a long time. Even the portraits of the Huang family's people couldn't match up to these people. One pretty black-clothed maid was pouring warm water into the tea leaves. And then there was the Huang family's family lord Huang Jun. A smile of flattery was spread across his face. He was seated so cautiously that solemnly that his B** talks had only occupied half the seat. His second younger brother Huang Ri was seated opposite to him. His countenance was even worse than his elder brother's. His face had turned deathly pale, and he was nearly trembling with fear. But his expression conveyed an unspeakable excitement as well. What happened regarding that matter? The old man in purple clothing asked. He was the one who was seated in the center. He hadn't even moved his head when he had asked this. The news has been spread far and wide. I'm sure that those 3 powerful families must have heard of it by now. However, our ancestor and all these seniors are here. So, I'm sure that we have victory in our grasp. I'm sure of it. The Jun, Tang, and donghua families may be the top families of this world. But they are still people of this mortal world. And ancestor and all these seniors are gods in comparison. So, there's obviously no comparison. He. Huang Jun lowered his back as he respectfully replied. This old man hasn't visited this mortal realm in 79 years, but I had never expected to find such enormous changes. The purple-clad old man snorted. His eyelids didn't even rise as he continued darkly. My Huang family may not have been considered a great family in those days. But no one would ever dare to provoke us. But you unworthy children have ruined the family prestige left by your ancestors. This pains me greatly. This old man would have slapped you brothers to death to avoid tarnishing this family's name if you two didn't have the Huang blood running through your veins. He suddenly changed the topic and opened his eyes wide. They shone as they looked at Huang Jun. And, you're particularly degenerate. You bastard. You were being humiliated so greatly. And you still accepted all that humiliation. You accepted it. They've killed your grandson and destroyed a great part of your family. Yet, you were willing to go and plead them? You would plead with them to let this family off lightly? This is an enormous joke. Don't you know that one can control their destiny with hard work? It's fortunate that this old man has arrived at this time. Otherwise, you degenerate children would have led this family to absolute ruin. Yes. Yes. Please calm down. Ancestor. Your great-grandson is incompetent. I've disgraced the family's name. Huang Jun shed a rain of sweat from his face. Then, there was a thud sound as he fell to his knees. Ah. It seems that you still have some sense of shame. Get up. Who kneels so easily? Are you a kowtowing insect? The purple-clad old man narrowed his eyes. A mere group of 3 insignificant families has dared to insult my Huang family. They genuinely don't know the limits of their own strength. Hee, they're courting death. Wouldn't it be too easy for them if they don't learn a timeless lesson? Can this descendant dare to ask what the ancestor means? Huang Jun was somewhat anxious. He was already over 50. But, this ancestor obviously didn't treat him as such. Instead, he treated him like a 3-year-old child. The conditions are the same as the ones I had set before. Only, I'm sure that those 3 families won't accept such harsh conditions. So, we have a justifiable reason to make a move on them. And bring destruction as long as they don't accept our terms. And, what's with calling them 3 powerful families? My ears find it very unpleasant when you call them 3 powerful families. So, do that only if you wish to offend this old man. No one in those 3 families will be able to survive this disaster. Yes. Huang Jun smiled inside. This is what he was eager for. Cut the roots of the weed you wish to get rid of. We can surely act arrogantly as long as the ancestor is here. But, he'll have to return at some point of time. And, who knows when he'll come back here. Thus, I fear that my Huang family will be finished even if one of those 3 families still exists by the end of it. So, we must erase those 3 families from this world, once and for all. Senior Huang. I think this matter requires some consideration. The Lord has sent us here to examine those bone-tempering pills. They are being auctioned at the aristocratic hall. And, the aristocratic hall is run by the Jun and the Tang family. Moreover, the Jun and the Dugu families are future in-laws. A silver-cuffed purple-clad old man smiled. His smile was one of deliberation, while his words were of caution. That's only natural. After all, the young lord has arrived here along with the rest of you. Therefore, this Huang obviously won't take this decision on his own accord. The Huang ancestor gave a dark snigger and continued. We must obviously obey the young lord's opinion when it comes to the course of our actions. Everyone's gaze turned to the youngest of the purple-clad people. That middle-aged man was the young lord of the illusory ocean of blood. It was surprising that he was at equal footing with the Huang ancestor even though he was so young. The middle-aged man's heart was in a tangle. He thought, you've already been extremely clear about this matter, Senior Huang. Can I even disagree with you in this case? Wouldn't you lose face if I were to disagree? And, wouldn't that lead to a potential internal strife? After all, you have a high standing at the boundless ocean of blood, Senior Huang. Wouldn't you flip out if I were to overrule you in front of so many people? And what's to be done about the bone-tempering pills if we are to follow through with your ideas? Killing a few people of the regular society is naturally not a big deal. But these people are related to those bone-tempering pills. And those bone-tempering pills are an object of priority for our illusory ocean of blood. In fact, they relate to our rankings with the other two holy lands. The young lord had automatically omitted the Tian Fa forest from his consideration. He muttered to himself for a while before speaking out. Senior Huang's family has suffered much bullying and humiliation. We naturally can't ignore it. Otherwise, wouldn't people belittle our illusory ocean of blood? So, it's only natural that we declare our hatred. It's natural that we let out our rage. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 497. Interrogation. The young lord spoke till here. And a gratified expression swept across the Huang ancestor's face. In fact, he even smoothed his beard and smiled. But the young lord again spoke up. However, we need to divide these matters into two main parts. Our main aim is the bone-tempering pills. We mustn't fail at this. The second is the Huang family's enmity. We have to take revenge for them as well. Therefore, we must balance this. But I'm sure that Senior Huang has a plan for this. His words were so sleek that no one would be offended by them. But he had still managed to point out that they couldn't fail when it came to the task of the bone-tempering pills. That was their most important objective. The Huang ancestor muttered for a while at first. Then he spoke up. We've determined that the bone-tempering pills are related to the Jun and the Tang families. We can question them about the whereabouts of the bone-tempering pills if we move now. We could also ascertain the identity of the individual who has refined those bone-tempering pills. Perhaps we can get the recipe for those pills as well. Then, all our problems will be solved. And we can forge ahead. And we can slaughter without misgivings. After that happens, it wouldn't even matter whether it is the Jun, Tang, or even the Donghua family. Senior Huang is absolutely correct. But we can't make a move against those three families before the matter regarding the bone-tempering pills is settled. The young lord spoke calmly. That's obvious. However, it would be impossible for us to find out those bone-tempering pills' whereabouts if we were to rely on the current strength of the Huang family. I fear that we require a few people from our side to make it a sure thing. The Huang ancestor looked at the several purple-clothed people and flashed a dark smile. The young lord nodded slightly. Those people cupped their fists and said, "We won't shirk from our responsibility. We'll do it for the sake of the illusory ocean of blood." The Huang ancestor snorted and said, "There's no time to lose. We'll make our move tonight." His gaze underwent a transformation. And his glare shot out like two sharp arrows from his eyes. They contained an unparalleled murderous aura. It was a windy and moonless night. Murder and arson had pervaded the skies. Jun Moxie's predictions were about to come true. Tang Yuan was constantly cursing. Dang him and his inauspicious remarks. His words are coming true. Things are about to get very bad. Everyone at the aristocratic hall was jittery and paranoid. They treated anything suspicious as an enemy. Many high-level experts had charged roaring and had left screaming. Waves after waves of them had been coming. In fact, there was almost no time for rest. This night had been particularly busy. The two Sky Xian experts Hai Chenfeng and Song Shang had already dealt with 3 or 4 waves of attacks. And one of those waves had been rather tough. In fact, they had to strive with their entire strength in order to repel it. They were extremely tired and sleepy, and were thinking of washing up and resting. But this is when another wave arrived. The two men became extremely angry. "Damn it! You still won't let us go sleep." Consequently, the two men charged out somewhat crazily. They chased the attackers with red eyes till none of them were left alive. They had been sulking about their ordeal the entire time. They eventually returned victorious to the aristocratic hall, but found out that Tang Yuan was done for. The window in Tang Yuan's room had noiselessly opened when Haichen Feng and Song Shang had rushed out. Two men had entered the room like floating clouds. Tang Yuan was on his bed at this time. In fact, his snores were loud enough to shake the heavens. The two men saw that huge monster on the bed, and looked at each other. Then, they shook their heads. "This one is too fat." They had planned on dragging him out the room before setting about the interrogation. However, they saw the elephant-like size of that man. And both of them dispelled their initial idea on the spot. Flying away while carrying this huge and obese man would be an extremely difficult task. In fact, even the prospect of getting him through the aristocratic hall's door could be challenging. After all, the target is too big. Moreover, it would be extremely difficult to find a place to hide him if needed. This amount of effort would be akin to a test of strength for us. And just look at him. He looks extremely fat and greasy. Merely looking at him was disgusting for them. What could one speak for the idea of carrying him away? Anyway, couldn't they get right to the point and interrogate him there itself? It had to be said that growing fat wasn't a good thing. But it would turn into a blessing for Fatty Tang whenever he'd run into such matters. In fact, it was an excellent thing. Heavens knew how much he would have suffered if he was kidnapped by those two men. In fact, he may not have returned even if he had told them everything. This situation was a great illustration that even a single peck of the grain can provide help when everything seems lost. The two men floated to the bedside. One of them extended their hand and patted Tang Yuan's forehead. But Tang Yuan turned to the other side. His muscles continued to palpitate, and he kept snoring. The two men were stunned by this. They had never expected him to be so unvigilant and at ease. He didn't wake up even after his head was hit. Then, there were two bangs, as they slapped Fatty twice on the face. However, he was still in deep sleep. One of the men got mad. He grabbed the collar of Fatty Tang's night clothes and forced him to sit up on the bed. Fatty's huge and elastic belly covered his legs as this happened. Tang Yuan's hands drooped, his head tilted, and saliva streamed out of his drooling mouth. Even his snoring hadn't ceased. Dang! One of the two black-clothed men had a good sense of humor. He found this rather funny. He gave a long sigh. This old man has lived for nearly 200 years. But this is the first time that I'm seeing someone who can sleep like this. Didn't this guy get any sleep in his past life? We've beaten him so much, and he still hasn't woken up. This is simply legendary. Let's make it a little more painful for him. He'll surely wake up after that, the other man suggested. We can't do that. This fatty will wake up the entire 9 heavens if he starts bawling. The sound will be very loud. And that won't be good for us. The black-clothed man who held Tang Yuan's collar sighed. Then, he extended his other hand and pinched the fatty's nose to a close. However, the slimy and greasy feeling made him feel like he was holding the uncooked intestine of a pig. That man resisted his nausea and continued to pinch the fatty Tang's nose close. The sleeping Tang Yuan suddenly felt that his breathing had been forcefully obstructed. He opened his mouth to gasp some air in while he fiercely tried to tug in air from his nose. However, he eventually opened his eyes in bewilderment whilst coughing. And huge amounts of spittle darted out of his mouth as a result. The black-clothed man who was holding Fatty's nose close couldn't believe that this guy was the young master of a noble family. This guy has no class. The assailant had never expected such a reaction. So, he wasn't able to evade it. But he felt extremely uncomfortable and nauseated since his neck had gotten covered in spit now. He wiped his neck in a flustered manner. Then, he snarled in a lowered tone while seething with anger. "Fatty! Don't fecking move. This old man will choke and break your fat neck if you make a single move." Tang Yuan was shocked upon the sudden realization that he had landed himself in a very dangerous situation. His eyes became wide and round. He was about to cry out in alarm when he heard that threat. But he choked and stifled his cry when he heard the threat. Consequently, his throat issued a sound similar to that of a hen laying eggs. It was unspeakably pathetic. "Where are the bone-tempering pills? Quickly hand them over to me. I'll let you live if you obediently hand them over," the masked black-clothed man asked fiercely. He was a man of many years' worth of cultivation. And he usually never got mad so easily. But things had gotten miserably out of hand in this instance. He had resorted to the use so much strength on a mere fatty. And that too a pathetic fatty who couldn't even fight back. But the spit on his neck had filled his mind with enough anger that he didn't care about these points anymore. Bone-tempering pills. Tang Yuan was in a gaze after being woken up. He blinked and cried out, "Jun Moxie, you're the kind of person who makes the inauspicious happen with mere words. You shut up. Don't you want to live?" The black-clad man nearly thought of running away at first. He then got hold of Tang Yuan's fat and twisted it while he covered the fatty's mouth with his hand. Tang Yuan shouted in pain, but the sounds got choked inside his throat. So, he was only left to tremble from the pain. Bone-tempering pills. Where are they? Who refined those pills? Where's the recipe for it? Fatty. I will slowly draw out that greasy fat from your body if you don't tell me where it is. The masked black-clothed man fiercely threatened. Hey. I'll speak. Tang Yuan was wise enough to know not to fight this. So, he surrendered. Ow. But, let me go first, breasts, and asterisk please, ow. It turned out that the masked man in black clothes had grabbed and twisted a part of Fatty's chest. The masked man was stumped at first by those last few words. But he became angry a moment later. You call that a breast? Bullshit. He found himself grabbing the chest. So, he couldn't help but curse while letting it go. But he still felt a bit awkward. Dang it. This old man has built his reputation over hundreds of years. But this fatty has ruined it. People will say that I grabbed a man's tit. This fat man is too obese. Speak quickly. You brat. The old man was beginning to lose his mind. I don't know who refined those pills. Tang Yuan hissed for air as he quickly replied. And I don't even know about the recipe. I'm just the junior partner for auctioning them. I do your mother. You dare to play with us? The masked man angrily tightened his grip on Fatty's throat. Tang Yuan's eyes were rolling, but he respected his mother the most. He was about to surrender more information, but he became extremely angry when he heard her being abused by that masked man. And He suddenly forgot the dangerous situation he was in. He then struggled and cursed. Do your mother. I wasn't done talking. You bastard. But you dared to insult her. I won't spare your life. The grip on Tang Yuan's neck became tighter. So, the fatty quickly returned to his main principle of knowing when not to fight and begged for forgiveness instead. Tang Yuan's mouth was once again covered as two slamming sounds echoed. The pain was accompanied by soybean-sized sweat drops dripping from his forehead. He had been put through that suffering a second time because of the sentence he had just spoken. Continue talking. And speak honestly, the masked man said in a bad mood. Tang Yuan decided to open up about everything once he had suffered for a long enough period of time. He spoke anxiously and quickly. The bone-tempering pills are not here with me. They are extremely valuable. So, they are kept at the Jun residence. Those things will be secretly moved here before the auction. After all, they're very precious. So, keeping the pills at the aristocratic hall isn't safe. Moreover, I'll be killed if they're lost. And I can't afford that. The Jun residence. The two masked men looked at each other. Fatty's explanation made sense. They had analyzed the situation along similar lines as well. Which part of the Jun residence? Bastard. The Jun residence is huge. How will we find it? You're useless. You brat. You can go to hell. The masked man snarled fiercely in a lowered voice. Don't kill me. I'll tell you, those are, in the elegant fragrance courtyard. It appeared as if Tang Yuan was losing his head out of fear. Spare my life. I told you everything, now don't kill me. What a craven and cowardly piece of trash. Elegant fragrance courtyard. Isn't that where Jun Moxie's mistress stays? The two men looked at each other and nodded. They seemed to have a good understanding of the Jun residence. Yes. 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 It's there. Tang Yuan nodded like a hen pecking grain. Elegant fragrance courtyard, okay. It's got to be there. The two masked men gave Tang Yuan a look of despise. It is said that fat people are the most cowardly of them all. It seems that this saying isn't false. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 498. Knocking at a widow's door at night. Tang Yuan arrogantly cursed in his heart. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm only fooling you idiots into throwing your lives away. However, he was begging on the outside. Oh, two heroes. Great heroes. I tell you. I'm a hard-working low-level employee. I don't have any standing in the aristocratic hall. Oh, two heroes. Have pity on me. I have an 80-year-old mother. My poor child will be left crying piteously for food if something happens to me. You will take mercy on their plight, right? Right. How wouldn't anyone? He hadn't even finished speaking when the two similarly dressed masked men shivered in cold. This one is absurdly shameless. This fatty is begging for his life in the most shameless of ways. 80-year-old mother, pitiful child, dang. You're only engaged, aren't you? And our intelligence suggests that your mother isn't even 40 years old yet. So, where did that 80-year-old mother of yours come from? Only your grandma will pass for being 80 years old. These two were men of great status. So, they didn't even wish to touch the fat man after watching him do this. Anyway, that fat man still had relevance in the matter. It wouldn't be good if they killed him and couldn't find the pills later on. This fatty is the auctioneer at the end of the day. So, He can't die right now. The figures of the two men flashed as they fled into the darkness with great speeds. After all, they might have died from nausea if they had stayed around that fatty for long. Tang Yuan's eyes remained closed as he continued to beg for mercy for a long time. However, he realized that his interrogators had long disappeared by the time he reopened his eyes. Consequently, this entire incident seemed like a dream to him, as if it never happened. He resolutely pinched himself. But it hurt so much that he gave a loud and wailing shout. He trembled as he crawled towards the lamp's light. He saw that there was a purple spot in his hand. There was mark on his neck from the strangling, and it hurt badly. Fatty remained in a daze for a while. But he eventually recovered. Then, a very frightened, sharp, and pained voice echoed. It sounded like the voice of someone who had lost his parents or spouse. Come here. Quickly come over here. Someone. Something big is going on. The voice was loud and clear. And it was at a very high octave as well. The voice spread into the night sky. It obviously affected those at the aristocratic hall. Even the other people in the aristocratic hall's vicinity were woken from their sound sleeps with a shock. This voice was extremely loud and incisive. The two masked men were quickly flying away in the distance. However, they stumbled when they heard this. In fact, they nearly fell down. The two men recalled that they hadn't hurt that fatty much. So, why would he be screaming so miserably? Tang Yuan was trembling with fright while sitting on his bed by the time Hai Chenfeng and Song Shang returned. He was panting, seemed confused, and his whole fat body was trembling uncontrollably. What's the matter? What's going on? The two men burst into the room like tornadoes. What's the matter? You two are asking me, what's the matter? Tang Yuan finally came to himself. He sprayed saliva as he ranted with indignation. This young master's fat would have been drawn and used for sky lantern if I had waited for you to return and ask me what happened. Dang it! Why did they have to threaten me like that? Who says these things? Are sky lanterns that amusing? Should the fat man always be guilty? Bah! Tang Yuan roared in indignation. But he saw that even Hai Chenfeng and Song Shang had disappeared by the time he was done with it. Ignore me altogether. Excellent. Excellent. Come on. Set up a meal for the frightened auctioneer. I want a lot of pork, steaks, and steamed buns. Tang Yuan roared. He had realized that his belly had started rumbling because of the scare he had just gotten. Therefore, he impatiently wanted to stuff himself. It seemed that reducing this fatty's weight was going to be a genuine problem. Mei Shuayan and Green Hunter had already gotten along well with Guan Qinghan on the journey from Southern Heaven City. They admired and sympathized with her when they had met. And these three people were living together again. So, the environment was obviously very amiable. The three of them had independent rooms. And Guan Qinghan's was at the center. The three women were talking late into the evening before going to sleep, as was their usual. The faces of Mei Shuayan and Green Hunter had sweet and understanding smiles as they heard of Jun Moxie's debauchee-like behavior from the days gone by. After all, the three women believed that Jun Moxie had been pretending at that time. So, they felt that it must have been very difficult for him to pretend as such. After all, how could it have been easy to pretend being the top debauchee wastrel of Tianxiang? The fickle heart can be very forceful. So, it must have been very hard for him to disguise himself as such a vile character. Guan Qinghan was still nervous even though the difficult crisis had passed over. However, She had suddenly found herself living with two people she could talk to. And this had helped in unburdening that load from her heart. The company of those two women had helped her get rid of the past's shadow to some extent. And she had become a bit more cheerful as a result. Otherwise, she would have been beset with serious worry like she used to be in the past. The three women had parted moments ago, and each had returned to their respective rooms. They were getting dressed to sleep at this time. But this was when Mei Shuiyan's eyebrows suddenly twitched. She quickly blew out the lamp on her table. She could clearly feel two formidable auras. And they were coming straight towards her direction. Moreover, these two individuals were genuinely very powerful. Green Hunter had also sensed it. She knocked on the window. Mei Shuiyan exhaled slowly and indicated that they remain calm. Then, a cold light flashed in her eyes amidst the darkness of the room. Who would dare to break in while we're here? These people may be considered strong in the eyes of ordinary men. But could they ever have the standing in the eyes of the Tian Fa Forest's lord? The Snake King motioned with her eyes in understanding. Then, she quickly hid her aura and stood calm and still. The night was extremely dark. Two figures darker than the dark of the night arrived quietly at great speeds while gliding like bats. They made next to no sound as they descended in front the courtyard's gate. The eyes of the two men flicker as they looked at the main board in front of the courtyard. Elegant Fragrance Courtyard. This is the place. The two men looked at each other and saw a sense of certainty in each other's eyes. It seems that this worldly family wasn't worth the attention we had given them. The two men seemed as light as feathers as their figures flitted in order to enter inside the courtyard. Then, they flitted again and reached the front gate. It seems as if the ground had shrunk beneath while they moved. That's nearly the best agility this human race is capable of achieving. Mei Shuiyan's eyes contracted. Hadn't she thought of sneaking into the Jun residence like this? But these were two great master-level experts. The cultivation of those two men weren't inferior to that of the solitary falcon in any way. These two men had covered their faces, and their features couldn't be distinguished. But Mei Shuiyan had already determined that those two men were from the Great Golden City or the illusory ocean of blood, if not the elusive world of immortals in the first place. There was no other place in this world except for those three which could send great master-level experts to steal something at night in this manner. It is possible that other forces may have similar intentions and the courage to do it. However, those other forces didn't have the capability to send two great master-level experts. The two men had arrived at the gateway in the blink of an eye. They attentively checked for any sign of movement inside. Then, they finally selected their target, and they came straight to where Mei Shuiyan was residing. This had happened because Mei Shuiyan had deliberately made sounds resembling that of a person sleeping. In fact, she had mimicked the breathing sound in a very uniform manner. And this had led those two great master-level experts to decide upon moving there. Tang Yuan's revelations had filled them with incomparable confidence and hope. How could they have ever thought that the fat coward who was so scared of death would lay such a refined death trap for them? Therefore, the two didn't have any misgivings as they arrogantly moved forward to steal. One couldn't blame those two for being careless. Everyone in the world knew that the Jun family had an exceptional expert in their support. In fact, everyone believed that the mysterious expert behind the Jun family was a legendary and unrivaled powerhouse in the present era. This news might have scared everyone else around the world. But it was nothing more than a joke for those at the illusory ocean of blood. Unrivaled? Who dares to consider themselves as unrivaled? More so, Someone from this common world is calling himself unrivaled in the face of the illusory ocean of blood from the three holy lands? This is a bit too much even for a joke. Anyone who had reached the bottleneck of the great master level was recruited by someone from the three holy lands. The name itself was divine. Moreover, they were working for the continent's future and peace. No one had ever had any reason to decline fighting in the battle for seizing the heavens. Therefore, it could be said that no such thing as an unrivaled master was present in these common man's lands as far as the people from the three holy lands were concerned. There was obviously a possibility that one or two such great master-level experts couldn't leave for the three holy lands since they were required to take care of some trivial matter in the common man's realm. However, even these individuals would agree to set a joining date for the future. And they would go and report to one of the three holy lands once they had settled their matters. Consequently, all the powerful men of this world were in their ranks. We'd like to see this unrivaled master of the Jun family. 8 of the illusory ocean of blood's experts had arrived in Tian. And all of them had been peak experts in the past. Moreover, all of them were at the great master level. So, how could this so-called unrivaled master be anything in their eyes? Therefore, the 2 black-clad men were quite confident there would hardly be anyone in the regular mortal world who could give them trouble. Hence, they moved freely, as if they were at their own homes, and thrust forward. They then came before the door, and knocked on it in a polite manner. It had to be known that this area was Guanqing Han's residence. The Jun family still hadn't declared her new status as their adopted daughter to the world. So, she was still considered their daughter-in-law. And she was still Jun Moxie's widow. She was still commonly known as his widow. And these men had knocked at a widow's door at midnight. The 2 experts from the illusory ocean of blood were capable of doing something like this. A gentle and cold voice came from the inside. "Who is it?" The 2 men looked at each other somewhat awkwardly. Neither of them was young in age. In fact, both of them were over 100. Their strengths and statuses were certainly great. But the matter at hand still wasn't pleasant. However, this woman's voice was enough for them to determine that the person inside was none other than Guanqing Han. After all, they had been informed about the rumor that this beautiful woman's speech was very cold. Therefore, the 2 masked men decided not to reply after confirming the identity of their target. Instead, they decided to make their move and leave as quickly as possible. One of them moved his palm, and the door silently churned into dust. Then, their figures flitted, and they entered without leaving any traces. It was evident that their agility skills had reached the pinnacle. The 2 of them were standing inside the room in a wink of an eye. They looked around in the room, and they saw an elegant lady in a white dress. She was sitting calmly at the table. She was looking at them, and her eyes appeared as cold as the distant stars. Both the men exclaimed in their hearts at the sight of that woman's appearance. This Jun Moxie's luck with women is indeed amazing. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 499. Knocks into a big plank. She was very beautiful. Her countenance was like that of a flower, and her face was like the moon. Her unmatched beauty was capable of bringing down empires. Her eyes were like a calm lake, and her eyebrows were like jade. No words could describe her good looks and incomparable grace. It could be reckoned that one wouldn't be able to find another woman like her in this mortal world. Don't panic, young Guan. We're not bad people. The 2 masked men unexpectedly found themselves restrained while facing the shining face of a beautiful woman who could bring down empires. They even cupped their hands and made apologetic gestures. Not bad people. These two people nearly made Mei Shuayan laugh out. You two men entered a woman's room at night without taking her permission. And yet, you two somehow have the gall to say that you aren't bad people. Do you think your actions can be considered chivalrous? Oh. The two honored guests say that they aren't bad people. So, why did the two of you stealthily enter my room in the dark of a starry night? The two of you did knock the door a moment ago. But I never opened it to welcome you. In fact, the two of you gate-crashed without giving proper consideration to norms. That isn't proper, right? It's very hard for a young girl to believe you after witnessing this behavior of yours. Would the two of you please give an explanation to this young girl? Mei Shuayan had spoken these words with a smile. The eyes of the two men brimmed with embarrassment. They hesitated for a while, but were unable to speak up in the end. Both of these men were peerless experts. They had planned on moving quickly and escaping after they had acquired the pills. So, they shouldn't have been facing such a situation. But who were they facing right now? They were confronting the present-day Lord of Tian Fa. And she was on equal footing with the lords of the three holy lands. She was an expert whose skills had ascended to the peak of the ninth heaven. Mei Shuayan had concealed her aura in advance. Therefore, her body was giving out the aura of an ordinary woman at this time. But she had resided in a high position for a long time, and had looked down arrogantly on the world. So, how could she have concealed the temperament she had acquired whilst ordering around millions and millions of Xian beasts over the course of her life? She was sitting calmly, and she hadn't used any of her Xian strength, nor had she moved even an ounce of her primary power. But her presence had automatically induced a powerful and incorporeal field of aura around her. And this had thrown the minds of the two men into confusion. This was the reason these two men were acting so strangely. It was like a group of mice had entered a cat's territory. The cat hadn't appeared, nor had it made any sounds. But the rats had involuntarily felt their blood running cold. Both of us feel very uncomfortable since we're disturbing the young girl at night. But both of us will go back as soon as the young girl hands over the bone-tempering pill. We won't dare to trouble you afterwards. One of the masked men continued amiably. You're a smart young girl. You don't expect us to return empty-handed, do you? Hee. Bone-tempering pills? The expression in Mei Shuayan's eyes changed. She faintly smiled and tilted her head. She then replied in a calm manner. And what happens if I don't hand them over? Will the two of you use force? What happens if you don't hand it over? That sentence made the two experts somewhat angry. We've given you enough respect. Little girl. You're nothing more than an ordinary woman, that's all. But you still intend to stamp on others' pride for your own. Those pills relate to the safety and the future of the world. They can cause big trouble. We don't intend on harming you. But we'll be left without any options if the young girl would insist on not handing them over. After all, we're doing this for the sake of the common people. One of the masked men sighed regretfully. He felt very uneasy at the thought of raising his hand on a beautiful girl. In fact, he had started to develop protective feelings towards her. Safety and future of the world. For the sake of the common people. That is such an amazing excuse. I can't shoulder such a big blame. And oh, harm me? How do you plan on harming me? This young girl would like to ask how you two powerful men would go about harming me. Mei Shuayan smiled lightly. That smile was like a mild wind. In fact, It seemed that spring had returned to the earth. The tips of her brows, every silky hair of her head gave rise to an amorous feeling. It looked very titillating for a moment. The eyes of that masked man were fixed. This person was at the great master level. And he was very aged. But his gaze was fixed at her. And his hair was standing. It was evident that Mei Shuiyan's beauty and charms had reached a one-of-its-kind level. Be careful. The other black-dressed masked men suddenly retreated to the doorway. His palms had crisscrossed. In fact, his stance made it seem as if he was faced with a very powerful enemy. You, who are you? He had finally realized that something was wrong with that place. Mei Shuiyan's aura had begun to leak when her powerful charms had started to drift in the atmosphere. And this had suddenly woken him up to a realization that something was wrong. In fact, his entire body had quickly drenched in cold sweat. What kind of person would she have to be to defeat two great master-level experts with a few words alone? This was a very terrifying matter. The disoriented masked man also woke up and came to himself as soon as he heard his companion's warning. The luminous gazes of these two men looked towards Mei Shuiyan. But their eyes were filled with a color of extreme caution now. Mei Shuiyan lazily stretched her body. She looked even more beautiful as she yawned. Her small and beautiful white hands covered her mouth. She then spoke up in a manner which made it seem as if she was still half asleep. But I don't know if the two of you are from the elusive world of immortals. Or maybe from the great golden city. Perhaps the illusory ocean of blood? I can't be mistaken about you being from one of these three holy lands. Otherwise, you would have never been so grand with your speeches. Otherwise, you would have never opened your mouth to talk about the world's safety and future. Mei Shuiyan fiercely placed her hands on her waist after she spoke those words. She then opened her eyes wide, and the two men suddenly felt as if her sharp and incisive gaze had enshrouded their very being. The limbs of both the experts became ice-cold in an instant. In fact, her glaring eyes left these two men to feel as if her gaze could see through their bodies. But the most frightening thing was that those two men realized that they couldn't even move under the effect of her glare. They couldn't move. In fact, they couldn't even dare to move. That's because they would reveal some flaws if they moved. And a flaw is a flaw. In fact, even small flaws are still flaws at the end of the day. And they felt that they would be dropped to the ground by that woman if they revealed the slightest of flaws. After all, the disparity in strength between them was too great. This woman is surely an expert. In fact, she's an expert amongst experts. We've knocked against an iron plate this time. But where did this iron plate come from? This was too unexpected. You. Who are you? How do you know about the three holy lands? Moreover, you dare to oppose us even when you know that we've come from the three holy lands? The mask of one of the men's face had become drenched in seconds. In fact, beads of sweat were flowing from his face like a river. The three holy lands? They are very terrifying. Why can't we dare to oppose them? A lovable laugh came from outside as a green-clothed girl entered in a leisurely manner. Her beautiful smile highlighted her bright eyes and white teeth. Her black hair was drifting like the clouds in the same manner the willow is braced by a gentle wind. The person who had entered was none other than the Snake King Green Hunter. The muscles on the backs of those two men stiffened. This green-clothed woman is at least at the great master level. She isn't weaker than either of us in any way. In fact, she may even be stronger. Such experts appeared very rarely in the mortal world. But They had met two of them in that room on this night. Moreover, one of them was clearly more terrifying than the other. They had come this late at night, and had walked into an ambush. And the fact that they were ambushed wasn't terrible in itself. The terrible part was the fact that they had been ambushed by two heavenly women. Moreover, these two men weren't capable of dealing with these two heavenly women. Both those men thought of a plan at that moment. We'll scuttle back to the aristocratic hall and fiercely torture that fatty. Then, we'll draw every ounce of fat from him and make sky lanterns from it. We'll make that fatty suffer for real this time. However, those two men were still top experts of their generation. So, they quickly calmed down and started to laugh. Their laughter was hoarse and unpleasant to the ears. But it was still laughter, and not weeping. However, the sound of such laughter was more or less the same as that of weeping. Haha, young ladies, neither of you are Guan Qing Han, right? The man on the left laughed as he calmed down. But his eyes were flickering with a trace of bitterness. We brothers admit defeat today, but you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. You still haven't replied to my question. Mei Shuayan slightly lowered her eyes at first. Then, she slowly continued. I don't like repeating my questions. And I'm not accustomed to waiting either. This matter can stop at this stage. But is the young lady telling us that she still wishes to get in a fight with us and oppose the three holy lands by doing so? Does she wish to leave no room for preventing such a situation from occurring? One of the black-clothed masked men asked in an awe-inspiring voice. You're wrong. The both of you hail from only one of the three holy lands. So, I'll at most be against one of those factions if I oppose you. I won't be facing all three at the same time. Mei Shuayan smiled coldly. Moreover, I have nothing to fear even if I have to face the three holy lands together. Also, I'm trying to give you face by letting you answer me. So, don't you dare to squander my painstaking efforts. Mei Shuayan spoke very slowly. Every person from your three holy lands has a symbol on their clothes. So, this behavior of yours only reflects your stupidity. After all, I will find out where you've come from once I've removed those black clothes of yours. This girl isn't doing it right now since she wishes to allow you some honor. But that doesn't mean that I won't do it. Do you genuinely wish to die for not replying to my questions? Don't tell me you think I'll let you get away like this. I'm not as kind-hearted as I look. Who the hell are you? The two men retreated a step while looking at Mei Shuayan in shock. This girl is very familiar with the customs of the three holy lands. But how come we're not able to think of anyone who she might be? Mei Shuayan was sitting upright and motionless. Her expression was unchanging and cold. But she suddenly emitted a dense, cold, and pure aura from her body. This aura moved in the air like a snake. There was a tearing sound. And that pure aura had already reached the two masked men. In fact, it had ever torn down the front of their black clothes to expose their silver-bordered purple robes. The masks of the two men had also flown out to expose their densely wrinkled face, their grisly white hair, and alarmed eyes. The black-clothed men had tried their hardest to dodge that pure aura, but they were unable to do so in time. Ah, so you're the silver-gowned law-keepers from the illusory ocean of blood. That's not a low-grade status. Mei Shuayan looked at them in a dull manner. But you two are very raw. They couldn't have chosen you from this common man's mortal world. Ah. Are you the born natives of the illusory ocean of blood? You. The two men were dripping with sweat. Is Huyan Tian Feng that old? Mei Shuayan asked gently. that he needs to send the two of you to steal the bone-tempering pills? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 500. Chops a great master in one strike. The old lord is. One of the black-robed men blurted out under the pressure of her formidable aura. But he quickly realized that opening his mouth would be akin to surrendering information. So he hastily shut it. This was no different than burying his head in the sand. The old lord. So that old man Huyan Tianfeng has positioned himself behind the scenes now. So the new lord is his son? Mei Shuayan gave them a cynical glance. Has that old Huyan become that arrogant? Your 3 holy lands were anyways despicable. And this one has even handed over the leadership to his own son. He has even forgotten the tradition of abdicating the post to the most worthy individual. The 3 holy lands had always relied on meritocracy for succession of leadership. But your illusory ocean of blood has made this a matter of inheritance. That old Huyan has made his third-rate son the lord of the illusory ocean of blood? I'm genuinely amazed by this. Which one of the 3 holy lands doesn't follow hereditary succession? You girl. You speak such big words of insult and vilification about the leader of our holy land. You've become an enemy of the entire illusory ocean of blood. Our illusory ocean of blood won't let you off. But I will ask the Lord to forgive you if you agree to apologize and hand over the bone-tempering pills. The face of the old man on the left was painted with anger. He had even raised his finger like a weapon, and had pointed it towards her. His face showed that he was diabolically angry, but his heart still feared her. It was classic case of a sheep in a wolf's clothing. However, his inner feelings were clear as day. You two haven't experienced much of the society at large, have you? The corners of Mei Shuayan's mouth curled into a cruel sneer. An individual becomes a seasoned and experienced expert once they've braved the society on their path to the level of great masters. Do you think such an expert will lose their emotional balance in an unexpected situation while confronting an enemy? One look at you is enough to tell that the illusory ocean of blood has raised the two of you to the great master level. You may have acquired the strength of the great master level in this leisurely manner, but you don't possess the bearings of a great master. Moreover, you don't even have the experience of a great master level expert. Pieces of trash like you are no better than a regular spirit Xian expert from this common man's world. And you still dare to strut around like that in front of me? In fact, you even plan to coerce me into giving you the bone-tempering pills? You're becoming too big for your own boots. Mei Shuayan's tone became increasingly disdainful. Their hair stood on end when they heard these words of blatant insults. Those 2 old men from the illusory ocean of blood screamed in anger, and suddenly jumped while crisscrossing each other. They soared into the air at the same time. Their palms then seemingly grabbed cold and incisive winds, and fused them together. They had only come halfway, but they had already turned into multifarious terrifying phantom images. Their momentum had reached an extremely dreadful extent. Mei Shuayan snorted as her pretty and delicate-looking arms spread wide. She then shouted in an awe-inspiring manner, "You are foolishly conceited about your strength. You've invited dishonor to yourselves." World Cage. A large, formidable, and incorporeal field was suddenly formed. It isolated that area from the rest. The angry old man on the left froze on the spot, and was left incapable of moving his body in any manner. In fact, his body had even maintained his prancing stance in its present state of absolute immobility. The other old man turned pale with fright when he saw this. Then, sharp screams were heard. they were entangled with sounds of slamming. Mei Shuayan had already landed 3 palms to the old man. 3 strikes of her palm. Mei Shuayan's complexion didn't change in the slightest. She slowly retracted her palms and glared coldly. The chair beneath her had broken with a light sound. But she had made no other sound apart from that. However, that old man's shade didn't look so good. Instead, his body appeared like a silver ingot as he rolled away like a ball for a distance. However, he suddenly turned around and exerted his strength to stabilize his unbalanced body. He then opened his mouth wide, and something similar to an arrow of blood shot towards the green hunter's face. The old man's body didn't come to a halt either. Instead, it continued to dart away in a swift manner. There's nothing I can do here. It's prudent to leave early. This is a shocking and unexpected event. So, informing Senior Huang and the young lord takes top priority. Who could have thought of this? Who could have imagined that this insignificant Jun family would be concealing such an unrivaled expert? Therefore, he had made a prompt decision: escape. Even the exchange of a few blows can determine the life and death in a battle between experts. The outcome of this battle had been decided in this brief moment. They had only exchanged a few strikes. But the attacks of that unnamed woman were as fierce as thunder. And the power contained therein was unmatched. She had given him dozens of injuries by merely raising her hand. Moreover, she had damaged each of his major internal organs. But that old man was still at the great master level. He was able to resist vomiting his blood out there and then. In fact, he was also able to use it as a sharp weapon against the Snake King once he had turned around. It must be noted that his ability to deal with contingencies was rather exceptional. But it was a pity that he had run into the Snake King of the Tian Fa forest. She had earned the name of the King of Poisons for herself due to her treacherous and murderous use of venoms. How could she be deceived by that little trick? The Snake King hadn't intended to interfere in the fight since Mei Shuayan had taken the lead. But that old man had provoked her. So, nothing could be said about it now. In fact, there was nothing to be said. After all, he had raised his head and had shot an arrow of blood towards her. His then hands slammed against the ground, and his body changed directions to rise into the sky. However, the Snake King congealed a tremendous amount of power under her feet at this time, and shot resolute kicks at the escaping old man's calves. These feet had appeared out of nowhere. And they hadn't come from a usual kicking position either. These factors had made it next to impossible to guard against them. In fact, it could be reckoned that the old man's legs would be crippled if those kicks were to connect. He was certainly a great master. But he still wouldn't be an exception to this result. That old man became even more alarmed at the sight of the Snake King's incisive kick. However, his mind hadn't spiraled into confusion even though he had been frightened by this move. He quickly brought his palms upwards from the ground and slashed them like blades towards the Snake King's ankles at a tangential angle. His legs also became blurry at the same time, and he escaped further away. His escape was certain as long as the woman behind him didn't do anything. The Snake King snorted coldly. She raised her legs. She dodged the resolute attacks from the old man's palms. Then, she drove one of her legs towards the old man's chest in an even more resolute manner. Meanwhile, her other leg fell further to attack his knees with the tip of her toes. Those 2 attacks were extremely sinister in nature. Moreover, that old man could evade only one of them at his current strength. He would be a cripple throughout his life if he were struck on his knee. But his life would be in danger in case his chest was struck. Both these individuals were at the great master level in terms of strength. So, the difference in their strengths hadn't been very massive at first. But the old man had faced Mei Shuayan and had suffered injuries in the process. And serious internal injuries at that. Consequently, he had lost at least 30% of his fighting strength. More importantly, the lords of the three holy lands had cultivated these people behind closed doors. Therefore, it was very difficult to guess the disparity in the quality of battle experience they had acquired when compared to the great masters who had emerged from the ordinary society. But it was certainly nothing compared to that of the Xian beast kings of the Tian Fa forest. And this was the reason why this old man had fallen into such a disadvantageous situation so early in the battle. Forget about it. Let him leave. Mei Shuayan snorted coldly at first. She then continued. That illusory ocean of blood is nothing to me. So, you might as well let him return and spread the news. What's the worst that could happen? Anyway, he'll try to threaten us with that illusory ocean of blood's reprisals if you finish him right now. The Snake King heard that. So, she turned back her waist and quickly retracted her attacking legs. That old man was almost done for by the tip of her toes. But he was able to fly outside as a result of her retreat. He then jumped towards the perimeter walls in order to fly away as he continuously vomited blood whilst in midair. His Xian Qi was in motion. In fact, it was cycling at an overloaded capacity. And that had intensified his internal injuries. His emotions had particularly left him with a desire to die here and now. After all, death ends all of one's troubles. Such disgrace. I fought with everything I had. I even risked my life. But I was only able to escape like a mere pawn who was at the mercy of the opposite side. Mei Shuayan had certainly allowed him to leave. But this didn't mean that the other people would too. A brightly glittering sword suddenly appeared in the sky as that old man was attempting to cross the wall in midair. This glittering sword's rays were extremely bright. In fact, they were like streaks of lightning in the sky. The sound produced by the lightning-fast speed of this sword made it seem as if the sounds of thunder had exploded. It was going to hit him midair. That old man couldn't go up, and couldn't go down either. Moreover, he had started to believe that he had escaped this situation. So, he had started to rejoice. And this had led him to slack off to some extent. Also, the serious internal injuries he had suffered mustn't be negated from the equation. After all, the internal injuries suffered by his organs had seriously depleted his strength. Consequently, his aura had nearly dissipated by this time, and his strength hadn't returned. And this meant that he was at his weakest at that point. The timing of that glittering sword's appearance had been extremely clever. It was clever beyond an equal. In fact, the timing of that sword attack had attained perfection. It must be known that even a top-rated hitman wouldn't have been able to capitalize on such a fine moment of landing a sure-shot strike against a great master-level expert. The sword's rays filled the air with murderous aura. And the beard and hair of the old man were dyed jade green under its reflection. Terror, extreme shock, and despair filled his face at this moment. But he didn't even get the time to open his mouth in order to shout before it was all over. That sword's rays shrouded the entire sky as it slashed down into the old man's right shoulder. However, the sword didn't stop there. Instead, it continued to cut forth like a knife through butter. Only a slashing sound was heard as it cut down to his left rib. It radiates a bright luster as it again came in contact with empty air. Then, it issued a sword cry which sounded similar to the roar of a dragon. After that, It disappeared as swiftly as a dragon does when it enters the seas. The divine sword, the blood of yellow flame. A white-clothed youngster quickly appeared outside Mei Shuiyan's room. But his speed had made it seem as if he had been riding the very winds. That place was no less than 20 meters away from the spot where he had attacked the black-clothed old man. That black-clothed old man's body was still moving forward due to its momentum. But his eyes resembled that of a dead fish. The upper half of his body, including his shoulders, arms, and head, separated from the lower part of his body as he fell down. The upper half of the body smashed into the wall first with a bang. And the lower half followed after it with another bang. A blood of rain poured down from the sky. The matter had been concluded. The white-robed Jun Moxie had a warm and gentle expression on his face. He didn't even turn his head to look back as he entered the room in a leisurely and confident manner. He then smiled as he spoke. "This is very embarrassing." This Jun idiot's unsuitable protection must have left the two ladies startled. Anyone would have considered this Jun youngster to be a very innocent man if they hadn't witnessed that scene. Young Master Jun had been busy with training and refining those pills for the past few days. In fact, he had been working himself to the point of blacking out. It was unknown whether it was due to his skill or pure luck. But he had finally succeeded in refining the vitality linkage pill. So he was quite happy and excited about it. In fact, he was so happy that he had nearly emerged breathless from the pagoda. However, that was when he had suddenly felt the two men moving towards Guanqing Han's courtyard at a lightning-fast speed. "It seems that my plan has been effective." The young master had felt rather proud of himself at first. But he then suddenly thought, how are things with Tang Yuan? They wouldn't have. He had quickly made his way out when this thought had crossed his mind. He possessed the tactical sensibility and experience of a top-class assassin. So he obviously knew when the best time to make a move was. So he hid himself at the sidelines and started to fry the pan hot with his cold hands. He managed to take advantage of the situation in the end, and his sharp sword ended up slashing a great master-level expert into two halves. This story will be continued to chapter 501. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.